And so we're going to just go ahead and get started and call this meeting to order. We'll just call it 9 o'clock. Thank you all so much for being here. We're going to kind of explain the process and what happens after this as well, and kind of get into electing a chair and vice chair. I know you're all very excited about that, and there's going to be a lot of fights about who wants to be chair and vice chair. But I do want to start off by saying, so I'm Kayla Ballrod, I'm the fire program manager. This meeting is a public meeting, so it's actually being recorded and it's being broadcast over our YouTube channel. Can probably guarantee you there's not a ton of people watching, but just be mindful, do be mindful that these are technically public meetings. So I'm going to read you a public meeting notice. This is a public meeting subject to public meeting law, and it will be digitally recorded. Deliberation of issues will only be conducted by the task force members unless permitted by the eventual chair. Remember to try and state your name for the record each time you speak. Individuals who engage in disruptive behavior that impedes official business will be asked to stop being disruptive or leave the meeting. So again, just thank you all for being here. We really appreciate this. We do have some snacks and some coffee and water, so please help yourself. If it goes long enough, we do have meal cards for those of you who are in person for lunch, so we can kind of decide at that point if we want to just break for lunch or go get our lunch and come back and have a working lunch and get out of here earlier. Hope everyone had a chance to kind of look over some of the material that Brooke had provided. She did a great job putting that all together and then sending that out to you all and kind of organizing this. And she's going to take the lead of the meeting as well. So with that, I will, if she's ready, I'll kick it over to Brooke to just kind of explain the process and what we're doing here today.
Yes, thank you. I'm Brooke Valurivi. I've talked to a lot of you, but not met a lot of you in person, so this is nice. So we have gathered you all here today as a group of content experts to discuss the and help direct the changes to the NFPA 1010 standard as how they will be implemented on the application and fire certification process. So these changes will be reflected in Oregon Administrative Rule, and then in order to go through this process, after our meeting and discussion today, we will present the proposed changes to the Fire Policy Committee, who will then vote to approve or return the changes to the task force. If approved, the changes will go into a public comment period, which is the fire service's opportunity to express any concerns or opinions relevant to the changes and how it may impact their department or the fire service. If no substantial negative comments are received during the public comment period, the rule will then go to the board for approval, and then once approved by the board, it will go into effect. Once the rule goes into effect, firefighters with a current 2019 edition task book will have a 1-year grace period from that board date to complete their open task book. And then if they do not complete their task book within that 1-year grace period, they will need to complete the new edition of the task books. So are there any questions about that process overall? Okay. So the first things that we need to do are nominate a chair and a vice chair. So we'll need a motion and a second for the chair.
And I also have this on my list of things to do, but we didn't do introductions, so I apologize. I am Kayla Ballrod from DPSST, Fire Program Manager, and we'll just go around the table and then call on.
I'm Kevin Smith with Ontario Fire and Rescue.
Frank Knudsen, Klamath County Fire District 1.
Ryan Dickerson, Jackson Fire District 3.
Michael Carmen, Hubbard Fire District.
Dustin Hamilton, Lowell Fire.
Josh Marvin, Steven Fire.
Ron Drop, Lowell Fire.
Kurt Donaldson, Napa Fire.
Matt Crawford, Redmond Fire.
Gabe Wiggins, Clatskanai, and Westport Fire Districts.
Lydia Woodman, TV.
And then online, if you want to, Brendan, if you just want to introduce yourself.
Brendan Ginder, Mount Angel Fire.
And Josh.
Josh Marks, Scappoose Fire District.
Great, thank you. Okay.
And then RN is the
the
AI.
AI thing.
AI is taking notes for us today, so we're gonna try that out.
All right, so we just need a motion and a second for a chair.
And so the chair, the role of the chair today will be kind of leading the meeting, but don't worry, Brooke and I are here to kind of also guide as well. Brooke has made, for whoever the chair may be, a step-by-step instruction of what we need to do here today, so you won't be kind of struggling and floundering throughout the meeting, kind of trying to determine what to do. And then also, so the vice chair doesn't have a huge role today, but a chair and vice chair is helpful in the future for if we are going through the process that Brooke explained, going through the fire policy committee, going to public comment, the board, things like that. If we need some clarification, a second opinion, review of any documentation, things like that. So there is a little bit of work afterwards for the chair and vice chair, but we promise it's not too excessive.
I'm going to be the chair, if no one else.
Someone wanna,
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
all in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
And then do we want to do the same for the vice chair?
The chair can,
Nominate?
now lead the meeting.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to elect a vice chair for this task force.
I'll do it so we can move on. I'll nominate myself, which is really awkward.
I'll second.
Oh, thanks. You did the second nomination, it's awkward.
It's Kurt?
Yeah.
Okay. All those in favor of electing Kurt as vice chair, please say aye.
Aye.
And all opposed, say nay. Congratulations, Kurt.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Do I need to reintroduce DPSST staff?
Now we can skip that.
Okay, so I'm gonna turn this over to Brooke. Further explanation or go?
Well done.
That's about as stressful as it gets.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not too bad. These meetings are a little bit more relaxed than like if you've ever been to a fire policy committee meeting, anyone, so, yeah.
All right, so hopefully everybody has had the chance to review their packet materials and look over all the changes from the previous standard to the current one. So basically we will go over our recommendation and then we will discuss the changes. And then after that you will vote whether you want to accept those changes or we can have further discussion. So for the last 20 years or so, DPSST and the Oregon Fire Service have moved away from Oregon-specific standards and chosen to adopt and follow nationally recognized minimum standards from NFPA and NWCG. Following a national standard aids in safety, consistency, and liability throughout Oregon as well as across the country. The NFPA works to update their standards about every 5 years by gathering content experts from across the country, which helps maintain relevance and currency in knowledge and technology in the industry. DPSST staff recommends that this task force adopt the NFPA 1010 Professional Qualifications for Firefighters edition of 2024 into Oregon Administrative Rule. So I will turn it back over to the chair for discussion, but some key items to make sure that we discuss would be, do we want to keep the EMS requirement language, adding or not adding the role of support person as a level of certification, keeping the 6-month and 1-year requirement in place for firefighter 1 and 2, and then any other changes that you feel are going to have an impact on the fire service.
Question, was that 6 months and 1 year?
Yeah, sorry. 6 months for firefighter 1 experience, and then 1 year for firefighter 2.
Thank you.
And then, so Brooke kind of highlighted some of the changes and observations in your packet. So the memo, which is tab 2, has just kind of a bullet pointed list of some of those changes. From our observations, it wasn't too substantial. A lot of it was kind of semantical changes, but did anyone see kind of anything different, any concerns, discussion points on any of the changes from the previous 2019 edition to now?
Did you want to include the service support person in that conversation, or, but that's, I mean, that and the moving the EMS kind of to its own section?
Yeah.
Kind of were the two main things I saw, at least with the firefighter portion.
Yeah, that's a good discussion point. We can talk about that. So, as you might have noticed, there is a chapter on support person and a separate chapter on EMS requirements. We do have to be careful. We can't be the ones to kind of determine the level of EMS that people have and the training that they go through for EMS, but previously we had put on the firefighter 1 and 2 application that it was kind of up to the AHJ to determine what level of EMS that they, determined that their firefighters need, and it was a checkbox, yes or no. So we kind of kept that the same, but is that something that you want to keep the same moving forward?
I think that's fine. My big concern is the support personnel. If we go with the way it stands right now, we're gonna have to add another layer of support into our department, because I have people that they work our rehab, they're on scene, right? They're not gonna manage hose or connect a water supply, and that's a task. I'm gonna have a 75-year-old come in and hook up a hydrant to an engine. So it either needs to go all the way out, or we need to modify what it says.
Well, I mean, just because the standard exists, doesn't mean you have to certify it.
I understand that.
Yeah, and there's currently no curriculum for support person, so kind of the thought would be potentially if it was something that people felt strongly about adding as a level of certification, which just as a reminder, we have about 76 already, we would need to have some sort of training, or potentially it would just be task book or task performance. Some levels, I believe, like Inspector 3, they don't have any training required. It's just the completion of a task book to meet that. So that would be an option as well. Good morning. If you want to go ahead and just sign in right there real quick.
Agency, that can be addressed in your policy, though, as far as what level you're going to allow them to do. The certification is a gym like St. Morgan, but your policy limits what you're going to have them do.
Sure. Yeah.
I know from my agency, especially over at Westport, the support person is basically what my firefighters are. So having some sort of level of certification for them would be great. But there's a lot of, we're a non-ideal age fire district right now, and so that's that. Most of them cannot get firefighter 1 because they're not going to, do the SCBA stuff. So the support for Westport, support personnel would be really nice to have some level of, I may adopt it within the district, whether we choose to adopt it anyways, because I think it looks very close to what we have, but
I believe this would definitely give options to a lot of our other rural departments. Like you said, ones that don't have the ability to do fire attack, just offer one more opportunity. By all means, we don't have to follow. We can always submit another class and say, this is going to be our support person minus hydrants, and then provide that to DPSSU, and then we can get it certified under our individual departments as that particular training. As long as we can document why it's needed that way. Not everybody's going to have hydrants also, so it may not fit in with rural departments that don't have hydrants. So to be able to say, hey, we don't have hydrants, so we're gonna do this, but minus the hydrant part.
I think the vernacular just says hook up to water supply.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could be water tenders, it could be anything, so.
Yeah, it covers hydrants and, drafting operations in the state.
So when we say there's no curriculum, IFSA 8's not gonna cover it?
I mean, basically, like, it's not, there's no designated curriculum to cover it, because I think if you're doing firefighter 1, you're going to cover
Yeah, you're gonna,
everything
if
for
you're
that.
running through Firefighter 1 class.
Yeah, but they don't have,
Up to a certain point, you're covering everything.
yeah,
I mean, Firefighter 1 is just adding on to what's in there.
Yeah,
So if you
but-
run through regular Firefighter 1 curriculum,
yeah,
And you don't have to run through support according to the,
no.
yeah, you can just go straight to firefighter one.
yeah,
Well,
it's not
and-
a prerequisite.
And let's be honest, that at some point, some of your more rural departments in Oregon, which we have to look out for, you'll get volunteers, they'll start running, it's probably happened to all of us, you'll start running them through the program, and then they get to the SCBA part, and they can't put their mask on, or they panic because it's the first time they've had something on their face, and no matter what you do,
We're talking support.
you just can't get through it. This is that spot for that person. Instead of cutting loose and saying, hey, we've lost, we've invested X amount of teaching hours and man hours, and to make sure you put on a PPE and you can do these skills. Well, you can't put an SCBA on, so, it was a pleasure working with you. And now we've got some teeth to it. I mean, years ago, we were talking about that Frontier Firefighter standard.
Yep,
I mean, really, this is it in a formal form.
yeah, that's a good point to think about that, yeah.
In Jackson, Josephine County, there's been a big ask for training association for some kind of exterior non-ADLH certification that the departments can latch on to that gives them some teeth in the game, because they're not gonna go IDLH, and they have volunteers that wanna get certified to some level. I mean, this is a great catch for that.
Yeah, I apologize for being late. Traffic was, for some reason, it was full of log trucks and tourists this morning. My pops, let's fire Lincoln County, and I actually polled our Chiefs Association, or Fire Defense Board. And we all seem to be consensus that a support person should have CPR, first aid, and some level of hazmat, probably awareness, the online portion. And so then I kind of wondered, is this going to be a burden on some really small rural districts? And I don't think it will be. The hazmat could be a challenge, but the rest of it, the CPR and first aid, I mean, if you're a support person, you're probably ultimately going to be exposed to something. You're going to be helping restore medical equipment, or you're going to render some first aid on scene as a rehab person, which is, I think, where I see most of the support people being utilized at in their air cylinder filling. So, and if you're dealing with an air pack and refilling it, then there's carcinogens, and that's kind of a hazmat thing. So being aware of that stuff. So as far as curriculum, it exists. It just has to be kind of codified or memorialized. These are the things, I don't know if you can say you have to do as much as we recommend, since it's a voluntary compliance anyway, Firefighter 1.
But in order to be certified.
Say what?
But in order to be certified, you do have to
Right.
meet
And
those
so
requirements.
is that certification you folks would take on as a support person?
Yeah, so if the task force decides that it is a level of certification that they want to add, then yes, we would add this as a level of certification. Or we would propose this to the fire policy committee, and then they would have to vote yes or no. And then it would also go into the public comment period,
Sure.
So the rest of the fire service would also have the opportunity to comment.
So I've had my hand up for a while. Can I add something in there, Brooke?
Yes.
Okay, Josh Marks, Scappoose Fire District. So I think there's a couple things. I think all the rural organizations are in agreement that we need this, right? When you talk about the curriculum may not be set by DPSST on what actually is needed, but the curriculum is there in either the Jones and Bartlett or the IFSTA. It's just different components, right? So all the things in the support personnel are in the book, in the text. They just have to be captured on what chapters they're reading and those kind of things. So I think that part is kind of a null and void argument. But my thought and my point goes back to the key point that you have in step 4 of the task book, that we're trying to follow NFPA and NWCG standards. And this is in the new standard. So if it's not going to be a state certification, it is technically an NFPA standard. And certification. So I think it has to be in there if that's the way that the state wants to follow. And then that helps cover organizations for liability factors and liability wise as well. If you have somebody to this level and you get them certified, it helps the liability aspect of everything and making sure that they're certified to where they need to be and what they can do. That's my thought.
Okay. And just to clarify, I mean, we don't have to adopt every single standard or every single level that is in every standard. You know, it's up to you guys again, but it just because that chapter is in there doesn't necessarily mean we do have to adopt it. Just like there's plenty of levels of certification that we don't have, that would be a part of other standards, even though we've adopted part of those. But you are absolutely correct, and if the task force determines that this is a level that they want to add, we probably should have if there's not curriculum, then we do need to provide the fire service with information, and you guys would have to help determine what the training requirements would be so that when people call me asking what this is, then I can explain to them how to complete it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it makes sense to me, but just looking through the standard real quick, right? I mean, so it talks about initiating a response. That's part of the firefighter 1 thing. Receiving the transmit and receive communications. It's part of the firefighter 1. Identify situations that require respiratory protection, part of the firefighter 1. So all of the things in there are part of the firefighter 1 curriculum, minus maybe 1 thing or 2, but you're talking about extinguishers, you're talking about lighting up a scene, you're talking about refilling SCBAs. So the curriculum is there. We would just have to say, if this is the certification you're going for, you need to complete chapters 2, 3, and 4, or the crosswalk in the back of whatever text you're using. Those are the JPRs and the KSAs that you have to complete for this certification, which is already on all the applications, correct? When you look at water supply, it says, I'm just going to spout out a number, 5.3.7. If you complete that in the training for that, both didactic and hands-on, then you've completed the training for it. And we could go through there and just look at the crosswalk in the back of either one of the texts and say, you need to complete the water supply chapter for this portion. You need to complete the communications chapter for those. You kind of see where I'm going with that?
That seems pretty cut and dry.
I'll echo what Josh said. That's kind of the same feeling I had when I was looking through the standard. Was most of these, one, with it becoming part of NFPA, I'm sure IFSTA will put out something. Of course, and probably Jones and Bartlett, they want to sell books, so they'll come up with a curriculum that they can sell. But most of that curriculum is embedded already. I mean, it's picking and choosing which chapters out of like essentials or whichever book you choose to meet those standards. I mean, chapters 1 through 4 are pretty much an automatic no matter what. That covers your incident management system, the orientation, the history, and a lot of the stuff that's already in. That's part of firefighter 1, but also is this going to be part of the support. So I think the curriculum's in there. It's just, again, picking and choosing the appropriate chapters from that firefighter 1 book to meet the standard.
So it sounds like we may have kind of consensus that we do want to add this as a level of certification. Okay.
Should I ask the question? Is there anybody that doesn't think we should add it?
I'm just going to throw in my 2 cents. I'm not opposed to adding this as a level of certification. I do have concerns with, there's a lot of coupon collectors out there, and so how many firefighter 1s and 2s are going to want to be a support person now that we have this as a level of certification that they could have? Do you see that as an issue? is it going to be a lot of added work for Brooke, who will get an influx of applications for people who are, you know, already folks who are on the line and actively being firefighter 1s and 2s, now applying for support specialist just because they can, support person
I
just
think
because
if
they
you
can.
front load it with some information as to what it really is, I don't think they'll have that problem. It's not with my agency.
Or would it be assumed with firefighter one?
That's the thing. Yes,
That's why.
but people get excited about certificates, so.
Well,
Yeah.
and the other side of it is in the accreditations for an agency, if they are currently doing firefighter one, firefighter two, is that gonna be an assumption that those agencies can do,
Oh, yeah,
the
that's a
support?
good point.
Because that needs to be added to accreditation, correct?
Yeah,
Or would it just be assumed, like you do as a fire, you know,
I
a fire
mean-
two, you assume get fire one?
right, yeah, I mean, my initial thoughts for the time being, if this is implemented, would be, we could assume that until we kind of start rolling out the next accreditation agreements, like when people start to expire, we could start adding it, but, you know, if anyone else thinks differently, then please.
I think back on your first question of, are we gonna overload certificates? I mean, that's really on each one of us as our department leads to make sure our guys are not doing that. And, you know, we've got academies, if we have people that we need to certify at that level, then great, get it. But I'm not gonna allow my guys to say, hey, I want this, you know, just because it's there.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not,
Just to
Yeah,
have
I
it as a
appreciate
certificate,
that.
yeah,
you know,
Yeah,
but
especially
it
going
comes
back
back to
everybody
us.
gets one retroactively.
Yeah.
Everybody in
I
Oregon.
don't think we're gonna do that.
That's a prerequisite to firefighter. It's a standalone cert, and if we have people doing firefighter ones, they don't have that certification to say that they're firefighter one. And I think if we were to say the other way, that it's gonna be a requirement before firefighter one, then that's gonna be a lot different. You're gonna have a lot of people trying to get it, but.
I think your point of staff time is probably valid, Brooke.
That's almost a call
What's
on
that
Brooke.
gonna look like on your side of the house?
I mean, it really depends. I mean, anytime there's something new, of course, there's going to be some growing pains. I think it would be preferable to not, you know, really allow people to go backwards and get this certification. So if they want to start with this, great, but they've already exceeded those requirements, and it's not really for that for people who already have met firefighter 1 and 2. That would just be my opinion, because then it's just kind of irrelevant.
No, not so much irrelevant.
Well, if you already have firefighter 1 and 2,
Oh,
you're
yes.
just kind of,
I do think there'll be some kind of people here and there that maybe want to retire and stay on with the fire department, maybe not be a firefighter 1, but will want that support specialist role.
So, but, I mean, you've already got your firefighter one, that means,
So that begs the question is this gonna fall into recertification? Is this gonna fall into the 60 hours a year? Cause I have guys that are 65 on the line, they're not on the line, can't be on the line because of injuries, but they're great instructors, right? And so I'm trying to figure out how to get them recertified so they can instruct this class. So is this gonna be like the instructor where it's 4 hours per year of recertification or what? Cause I don't think the 60-hour minimum is applicable to this.
well, it would probably fall in the operations track. So just to clarify, it's 60 hours per year, but it's all of your certifications that are in the operations track collectively. So, you know, it could be 20 hours of firefighter 1 and 2, 20 hours of driver. It's not 60 hours of support person, 60 hours of firefighder 1.
I understand that
Do
part
it
of it.
TPE
Yeah.
also.
Okay.
So even if it falls into the 60 hours, the other thing, someone has the certification and they've done 30 hours, you can task performance them at the end of the year and they would be good to go.
So I can't imagine any of my people going, oh, I could get that certificate. I want that if they have firefighter 1 already. We do have some more senior retired folks in our community that would like to help. And we've sort of been doing this already, but it'd be nice to make it more official and clean around the edges. Does anybody think a lot of their people are gonna wanna get this certificate?
well, I have one or two then I would have to tell them that is stupid, don't do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think collectively we can pretty much discourage that.
I mean,
I would
it-
hope, I mean,
And I've got a couple in the county that I see on a frequent basis that we'll have to talk to their training officers and say, no, that's not what this is, don't do this.
yeah.
EPSST is gonna laugh at you.
You already put it for
Right.
language.
And there is also the impact that this will still go through the background check, the fingerprint process. So, but that also just may be a consideration for you guys, and because that is a cost, and potentially for that person who is just wanting to help, but may not be certifiable. It may not be worth their hassle.
I can see this going backwards on those retired people, or that want to still kind of participate or be involved with the department, but they can't handle the interior side anymore, right? So it's an opportunity for them when it comes to reaccreditation to say, I don't want to be reaccredited as firefighter one, I want to be reaccredited only as support. And you're still getting the hours in there, it's just the hour side that we're gonna have to kind of talk about maybe.
Yeah.
But that's a way for them to kind of work their way down and out of the service, is to go to a support position rather than they're no longer interior.
Oh, yeah.
Dave, you have something?
Oh, I was just gonna say, going backwards, if you're already a firefighter one, the idea is that at least to me, we're trying to make sure that we meet a minimum standard. And be able to say, so if you've already met a standard that's higher than that, within your own policy as an agency or whatever, I wouldn't have any problem saying, okay, well, you're no longer want to be front line, but you've met your firefighter one or your firefighter two, but you're bumping down, you just want to be a water tender operator or, these support roles. You've already met that criteria, you don't necessarily, and, let's be realistic with our maintenance recertification. It's on the training officer to decide whether or not they've met their needs to maintain whatever certs and what they're doing, so.
I think putting something out too in like the guide for certification, addressing this, that says, hey, this is an appropriate time to apply for this certification under these circumstances. If your member is already a firefighter one, firefighter two, on the line, whatever you want to call it, at your organization, then it's not appropriate to request certification at this level.
Could it just be implied that if you're already a firefighter one, it's implied that you hold this cert as well? And then it would be like dropping from a paramedic to an EMT. If you want to become at least in my, if you want to become, if you're a paramedic and you want to drop down, really nothing you have to do but fill out some paperwork, and that would be the time, would be during the maintenance recertification.
It's just a checkbox, they don't check the fire one anymore.
Yeah, they'll check the support person.
Yeah, you lost that certification.
Because we stopped doing implied on
We
that.
did,
Yes,
yeah.
we did.
we did.
That's
Stop
right,
doing
yes.
implied. But, we may need
We
more.
can come up with a different word.
Yeah, we may need
But the
more.
goal is to give them less work, that's what they're implying.
But I think there has to be some sort of structure, because adding this to everybody who has a firefighter 1 and 2.
Could it
Yeah, I
be
think
or
we need
firefighter
more
one.
I think we would just need more of a formal process. So if someone does want to drop down from firefighter 1 to support person, I keep saying that, support person, we would need an application for it, but, it's really no different than checking boxes on a form
You
too.
can do that on the form, that, if we choose to adopt it, we add it to the form, there could be a checkbox at the bottom that says, is this person reverting or from firefighter 1? And that's just a checkbox. They've met all those standards already, and then it's just a check, and then we sign it and send it in to you guys.
Yeah, and hopefully that documentation is still in people's files, from, back when they did firefighter 1 and
Not they gotta do it again.
the task books, yeah, exactly, yeah.
Yeah, but even so, when we're recertifying every 2 years, we're stating that they've met all of those requirements.
Yeah.
So if they stayed up on their certifications and kept up that time, as long as they've met, hey, I just can't go in and wear an SCBA anymore. It doesn't mean they haven't completed all the training up to then, it just means that they don't want to move forward with it. So that's back on us to make sure that we're hitting those boxes. And I think a simple box of, this person no longer wants to be firefighter one, they just want to drop down to this level. I mean, we're doing that on their recertification paperwork. To me, that's the same as an application. We're just removing that. It gives us an opportunity too, if somebody doesn't meet all of the standards, but have met the minimum for that position, that we can just say, we're not gonna allow them to be a firefighter one. We want them to be a support person until they,
Yeah,
and go
I just
back to
think,
another
I think for our internal process, we would need an application for that. I think we can go through the maintenance recertification process, add that support person
Track it.
box. But for us and our internal we have applications for certification for every level of certification, and that's how we track things. So I think just for our internal purposes, it would be best to just fill out, even if they have firefighter 1 and 2, let's say, and they're dropping, to fill out an application for certification. Would you agree?
Yeah, and I think it might be, I had created one with all 3 levels, but I think kind of given some of the discussion, it might be best if we just created its own application. And that may help eliminate people just filling out all the levels at the same time, or, thinking that they're filling out a different level. So that may be helpful as well.
Yeah, and we could potentially add a checkbox on the application stating that they've met, if they already have their firefighter 1, that stating that they've, the training officer is checking the box that they've met the intent of firefighter 1 and therefore still meet the intent of support person, but they would like to drop a level and no longer be something along those lines.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that makes sense.
so do we need a motion or anything like that to say we want to keep this to the standard?
So I think probably consensus is fine for
Well,
this.
I mean, yeah, we can have this kind of get a general consensus, and then when eventually we're going to want a motion and a vote if you would like to adopt the NFPA 1010 standard, and you can say in it to include support person or something like that.
Okay.
Kind of once we discuss some of the other changes, if there's further discussion on other topics.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
So, kind of goes on to one of the things that we're supposed to talk about with firefighter 1. I think having that checkbox for EMS per AHJ for the support person would be appropriate here too. It might be, hey, all you need is, but because it's on the AHJ to decide what that level is, whether it's a CPR, first aid, EMR, I know Chief Marks, Scappoose, they do a non-ideal age program. They might say to do this, you gotta be a paramedic, but it's an AHJ thing, so. But I think that would be an appropriate spot to put there, just make sure that people aren't skipping EMS side, because that really is gonna be something that they're gonna be asked to do, in my opinion.
And do you want to have an experience, timeline, like the 6 months and 1 year to this one, or is just kind of?
For firefighter 1?
No, for the support person.
I don't think for the support person, I don't think.
Sit on it.
Okay.
You can wake up one day and become a support person.
Did anyone else have any thoughts on the EMS part for the support person?
I concur with them. It's standard across all 3 levels, or potential 3 levels.
Yeah, firefighter 2 would be, since they already have to have it for firefighter 1, so that would be implied, yeah.
Are we sure we don't wanna have the 6 months? Because I'd be really uncomfortable having somebody come in, slam through X amount of chapters of this stuff, do a task book, and be ready to go in a month, or less. Our internal policy wouldn't allow it. I still think it's making it 6 months. But I would be really puckering on this incident to have that person, even on the incident.
The 6 months is very subjective, and what flowing in firefighter 1, but I'm curious to hear what everyone else is doing. I've heard so many different timelines of what that 6 months whether it's, you know, if you go to a community college, is it day one of the college for 3 months and then 3 more months in the field? Or someone's been around the fire service with their family for a couple of years, that's covers 6 months, and they come on day one, they've already met that. So like, that 6-month period is there, but what's their official start date of when we count that 6 months? I think everybody might have a different interpretation of what that is. Does that really carry any weight?
Well, I had this conversation with Brooke as well, when is it? And it's up to the AHJ, and, because we have the discussion, our academy's 4 months long, does that mean 2 months on the line and then they get their cert? And we've decided, at least in our agency, 6 months from graduation of the academy, right? So I think that's entirely up to your own jurisdiction.
Yeah.
And it's worded that way on the application as determined by the AHJ.
And Josh, sorry, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to add into that the 6-month timeline thing. I mean, when I heard somebody talking about the community college aspect, right? So if you're in a community college program, you're coming out of that with your IFSAC, your firefighter 1. So, and again, it comes back down to the agency having jurisdiction to be able to say whatever they want. But to be honest, as long as if they're smart and they know what they're doing, I don't see any reason not certifying somebody who is certified on the national level with their IFSAC or Pro Board and going that way. The academies are only their academies are only 3 months long at a community college. So I guess I don't see the need for that language in there. But to Kurt's point, put it in your agency's policy on the timeline on what they need.
There's only one community college that does IFSAC. So that means we're limited, that's gonna be a special thing for like people at PCC.
So PCC, Shemeketa still has theirs saying that they go through the IFSAC process. Is that no longer the case? Because I looked that up the other day when I was contemplating with myself back and forth on it.
PCC is the only IFSAC institution in Oregon because there can only be one.
Okay.
I believe Shemeketa is doing testing.
They might do on-site
but I don't
testing,
believe
but
they are.
the classroom portion
not
of stuff is
issuing
only in
the-
PCC and only can be issued through PCC.
Through PCC.
Okay.
But
I agree with the statement of don't see the need for it, but I think the caveat to that is, as us as the leaders, again, it's AHJ, we gotta set those standards. So, you know, whether you do, mine's a 10-week fire academy, but they're on probation for a year before they're actually released to be a active firefighter 1, so they can improve their skills. What I've seen in the fire service a lot is we're having a hard time getting volunteers in. And if we make it difficult for them to get those certifications, that's some of the problems that we're having with getting people to stay. You know, if it's fire departments saying, okay, great, here's your certificate, you passed all the physical training, you passed all the requisite knowledge, you passed all these things, you've been here for 5 months, great, you did all this, you met it, but you're on probation for a year. They still get that piece of paper that says they're a firefighter 1, and you as the chief, if they leave you and go someplace else, you have a conversation with the next department. This is where they're at. I mean, it allows us a little bit of room to give them the certification which makes them happy, but we still hold the standard, and we as AHJs can decide 1 year probation, 2 year, whatever it is, until we're comfortable with them meeting those standards. That's what our training officers are signing off on anyway when we do recertification or anything else. Their signature states our guys have met these requirements. As long as we hold those standards and keep them high, which we have to just assume every department's going to do that. For me, I don't necessarily see the requirement at that level.
I'll second that from our agency. Recruitment and retention is obviously a problem, but with the younger people coming in, they want that application, that little signature, that certificate that says I have completed this, nothing else, just for their mental well-being. And again, it falls on the agency to say, you have your certificate, but you're not ready yet, and so we're going to continue to hold it off for 2 more months or 6 more months or whatever that case may be. But I feel it would help with some recruitment and retention issues that we're experiencing.
Yeah, the only concern I have about this, you completed 4 years your certificate, is we're saying somebody's a fire 1 and they've never been in an actual structure fire other than in training. burn cell. They haven't actually responded to an actual fire, and now we're taking care of fire one already.
Some agencies, though, they're not gonna have a structure fire that they enter within 2 years as well, so do they not get their firefighter one certificate for that one?
Well, like even colleges are AHJs, right? So if a student goes into a college and they're literally just taking classes for 6 months, that college will turn in their certification for firefighter one. They never once stepped foot on an engine or even ran a call, but the AHJ / community college now is issuing firefighter certification. So we're seeing on the flip side, in the field, on departments that actually are having student programs or new hires competing against colleges that are issuing out firefighter certifications. And, are they both having the equal experience?
Right.
That can be argued. So we're seeing a 6-month time frame when I think goes back to let, departments figure out what is best for that individual. Just having a blank 6-month period, everyone's getting different experiences in that 6 months. I don't think we're really meeting the intent of what that 6 month is supposed to really give individuals. It's just a number kind of holding people back at that point.
I will say, just as DPSST offering to be the bad guy, sometimes agencies do use our requirements to help their policies or keep their policies in place. So if you have a policy stating that, the firefighter has to go through 6 months of experience, sometimes the fact that that is a requirement by DPSST is also used by agencies to prevent someone that's a brand new firefighter from being certified immediately. But again, that's just another side of that story.
It offers a little protection.
If you don't have the commitment level, then they see that I have to go 6 months. Okay, I don't want to wait that long.
Yeah, or just that, if there's maybe they've done everything on paper, but their chief doesn't feel like they're where they need to be. Sometimes those are hard conversations to have, and it may be easier to have DPSST be the bad guy.
Just believe you guys.
Yeah.
Perfect. I love that. Wish I thought of that sooner.
I think it's easier to roll.
Sorry, Brendan?
Yeah, I emailed Brooke on the 6 months and 1 year before, kind of trying to get the history for firefighter 1 and firefighter 2. And basically, for more experience, well-rounded, and safer was the response I got back. And for support, especially in rural areas, I would say 6 months is probably the safest bet. Get them some field experience, trying to show investment in and build them up. If we can go shorter, but we're trusting other departments to think that it's okay and we're leaving it up. Rather, we could push the safety aspect and kind of protect the fire service on this side.
Yeah.
Ahead, the firefighter 2 is 1 year. That's almost easier to track because you have if we were to say 1 year holding firefighter 1 certification, there's an issue date on that. So it's easy to keep track of what that 1 year period consists of versus again going back to what are we calling 6 months? What's our official start date? Because it sounds like everyone's different date and what they start their 6 months at. Could we come to agreement or figure out really what would be the official start of 6 months look like for departments across the state? I don't know if we would all agree on that one.
I agree. If we're going to put those numbers on there, we need to have a standard so that everybody's doing it. It's not, hey, we put them on our roster on this date, it's been 6 months. Okay, great, we can apply for their certificate now. Or 6 months after they've completed that academy. I think if we're going to put it in there, we need to set the standard so that we can say it's there for every department.
The problem with that though is then you're putting the same people that are coming on. Say I go to the local fire district where I live and say, hey, I want to volunteer. They say, okay, well, you got to wait 6 months. You got to go through the process. But my 18 years doesn't matter. Certifications that I hold doesn't matter. So again, we have to be careful that we are not putting our backs up against the wall when it does come to these things. That's why it's hard to make standards that go across the state, right? That's why it comes back to the local authority having jurisdiction and puts it back they need to do what's best for their organization. So I personally hesitant to say, hey, let's make this rule for everybody when the rule says, hey, it's a guide, 6 months, 1 year, that's a good starting point, and then the local organization has the ultimate say.
I would agree with you on that, because one academy is gonna look different from another academy. Some academies are combined with on-the-job experience, so, and like you said, other people come to Oregon with experience other places. I think that should be considered, not having a lot of retention and volunteer issues, but it just seems like for some other agencies, that would be something they would want to consider.
I actually had that conversation with Kayla several years ago. I had somebody come from out of state and had their firefighter chief from out of their state. Came back on the AHJ, it's like, it was up to me to reach out to the other department and say, what is your training including? And to be able to reach that. I see your point of the 6 months, if you have somebody that's been a firefighter too, and now they wanna get a support person or something, the 6 months to me is already way, they already have those certifications. It's not necessarily 6 months on my department, I guess, but 6 months in the fire service, 1 year in the fire service as a firefighter 1 already, you get 2. Doesn't necessarily mean it has to be at our department, but it goes back to the HJ to make that decision.
That's the way I've always looked at it, was 6 months as, not 6 months at, well, fire department or whatever. 6 months as a 6 months experience period.
We do the same thing. We just put them through our own task performance and just say, okay, you got this experience, show me. That's the easiest way to run it. You're gonna see right away if they've had experience or not. Especially those short experience guys, right? That have just come into your department after they've completed college and have had these, like, dude, you didn't learn anything. We need to do some more training with you before I sign you off, even though you have a degree. You're gonna play that in your agency. You're gonna check out your people before you sign them off.
And I think also one of the things that we were running into when hiring was easier and departments were getting, tens of applicants rather than ones of applicants, was that community colleges weren't able at one point to certify folks. And so they would come out of college, want to apply for a department, and then they couldn't because a lot of departments were requiring firefighter 1 and 2 and driver and things like that. So we did make it a little bit easier for community colleges to be able to apply for firefighter 1 and 2 by kind of getting accreditation agreements with community colleges. And then also leaving it up to the AHJ did allow community colleges to kind of determine that 6 months and a year time frame. And then therefore they were able to apply for their students to get firefighter 1 and 2 and make them more marketable when they were applying for jobs around the fire service. So that's kind of the benefit of allowing community colleges to be an AHJ and determine that 6 and 1 year time frame. And then ultimately, again, up to any fire department that hires a student is.
God, there's a bird drama. Sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, I'm so distracted.
So we can watch.
Yeah.
But yeah, then it allows the department to kind of put them through a task performance and make sure that they are at the level that the department wants them to be at. And if they're not, then of course, then you gotta work with them a little more. But it's a little bit of kind of info on the community college side of things.
When we're looking at this time frame, DPST at one time did a firefighter 1 academy. I think there's discussion about it again.
Yeah.
How does that play into the same thing? When I had guys go through that, it was we put them through the training, but they're coming back to you. You decide whether they're certified or not.
We won't certify the folks that go through our academy.
Right.
It'll be all, training based, and they'll get knocks and it'll go in their fire iris. But yeah, they won't come out of the academy with certifications. They'll have to take that paperwork back to their department, and then the department can determine timeframes and whether they're qualified based on your department policies.
So just to back up a little bit, I mean, it sounds like, I think the way that the 6 month, while it is vague, and people are applying it differently, it also is written to give different agencies the freedom. So this might be the best kind of way that we can write it. If anybody has any specific, differences, more than open to hearing that. I'm sure it could be written differently to achieve the same effect. But just to back up, did we want to consider adding any sort of time experience requirement to the support person level? Or do we just want to leave that?
We do 3 months, cause
That's what I was about to say.
Firefighter
Yeah.
1 6 and firefighter 2 is a year, so maybe do 3 months for support, just kind of.
Yeah. I mean, I was at first when coming in, I was gonna say, if they've done the curriculum, they've done the task book, certify them. But after this discussion, I think a 3 month would probably be appropriate for that position based on what they're doing. It also shows that they're gonna stick around hopefully a little bit longer than just grabbing a cert and leaving, so.
Yeah, and that gives the agencies the flexibility to be like, okay, well, you have to go through your 3 month probation, and then you also have to go through your 3 months of experience. So it can be really however long the agency wants.
So that's on the application. So when DPSST receives that, and they see the checkbox at 6 months, what is your understanding of that?
That per the AHJ, they have determined that this person has 6 months of experience in some way. So I'm not gonna call and interrogate people and be like, does this person really have 6 months of experience? But it's really up to you guys to determine. So if somebody if somebody's at your agency and they have only been, a firefighter for 1 month, and they are ready to get their firefighter 1 certification because they've done the training, I guess technically per the AHJ, you guys are the ones deciding what that time period and experience means. Ideally, you wouldn't be cutting it down by 5 months, but as the AHJ, you have the authority to determine what that looks like.
And that could be because they've come from another state, not in the Oregon system yet.
Yep.
And have experience. So they don't always know, even from the time you apply for a DPSST number, right? So
Most of the time we don't know, yeah.
Yeah, they can't even take that number, that date.
I'm just asking because it's on the certification as a requirement. So
Yeah.
if we have it on there, that's to a degree, it's stating that is a requirement. So if we were to say, who's going to say whether the person has it or not? Is it on the application for a particular reason? What is our standard? Because otherwise, why is it there? If it's just a checkbox to say every department gets to choose their own, is it really needed?
Yeah.
Or is it back to the fire departments to make those decisions for their own departments?
Yeah, and I think you're entirely right. I will say, if it's not on there, there will be people that are just going to immediately get there, and there just always will be. So if there is no requirement on the application, it's not going to be something that people are going to think about. Hopefully, every agency would have some, probationary period or experience, but just given the makeup of the Oregon Fire Service, that probably won't be the case for every single agency. I looked back, as Brendan had mentioned, it was kind of included to make sure that firefighters were well-rounded, that they had a good understanding of the agency that they were working for. It looks like this has been in place for over 20 years. So I looked back at the applications to write about when we were changing over to the NFPA standard, and so it's been on the applications for quite some time. That doesn't mean that it can't be removed, but it does look like it's something that's pretty ingrained in our system. Okay, Josh?
So I'm going to throw the hand grenade in here. You just said that it's been in there for 20 years, and I'm going to kind of go where nobody really wants to go and talk about EMS as well. EMS used to base everything off of response time, as response time was everything. That's what contracts were based on and all that. Now there's new data saying that response times don't always mean anything, meaning it's the care that you provide to your patient and the patient outcomes is what matters. And the way I'm correlating back to this is the 3 months, 6 months, a year doesn't always matter. I can have somebody who is a super go-getter, and just by talking with them and knowing them and having conversations, I know that they're going to be here for a while, and they could get everything done in 2 months, and they know what they're doing, and I can send them through task performances, and they can show me that they got everything done. Same thing with the firefighter 1, same thing with the firefighter 2, all of it. Me personally, take the timelines out. It's whatever the organization wants to do and them knowing their people. I've had people before when I was a training officer who wanted to they had their task book done, and then we go out and we do another test, and I can see that they're just not quite there yet. And I have that tough conversation. Hey, you meet everything, but I need you to get a little bit more experience. And those are the tough conversations that training officers and operations chief have to have with people of, hey, you need a little bit more time under your belt to get here. So for me, I'm going to throw that out there and just say, get rid of them and have the organizations decide on how they want to do their own thing.
Just to play on that, Josh, you have guys that, they've been affiliated with your department or district for a year, and you got a guy or a gal that's 2 months in, and they've already surpassed them. They've been here, not around, but they've been here for a year. Doesn't mean that it's not experienced, right? Because they're just there.
What I hear from Brooke is that the 6 months has an intent. Like, it has an intent to slow things down, give people some time to understand their district or their department, to get some experience, and not just crank them out for everybody. And so there's that stand. The intent is to give people some experience, like you said, make them real rounded. But there's also the vagueness or the ability for the people that are knocking it out of the park after 2 months, and somebody feels like it's a good idea to give them firefighter 1, or you desperately need the volunteers, you need people to staff your rigs, like, you have the flexibility to do that, but the intent is also there to make people more rounded. So I personally would vote to keep it in, because I think that it has a good intention and is flexible. It's not super rigid.
I like the idea that it's being portrayed as a requirement, but it's not really a requirement, and we're giving mixed signals to different people. If it falls on the AHJ, have a box that says, does AHJ recommend this person for certification? Rather than it has to be 6 months. If it's 2 months for some people, or a year for others, the AHJ gets to recommend that or make that decision, so why put a time period on it? And for some it could be less, and sort of others it could be more.
I would also say that I'm a new to DPSST stuff. I'm not even a DLO at this point. And maybe somebody coming in is fresh, doesn't really know what the rules are, and it might be good to have some rails on this thing, and if they have questions, they can ask. You guys are always super responsive, so I don't know.
From what I gather from what you're saying to me, if it's there or not, it doesn't, this unfortunately comes back to that question. It doesn't matter if it's there or not, we're just checking the box. And if we choose that 2 months in, this person's a rock star, us just checking the box stating that, hey, we think that they're able to beat this. It's unfortunate though, because then we see it as here's a requirement, but yet what we're being told is it's here, but it doesn't matter. You get to make a choice as an AHJ.
I wouldn't say it doesn't matter. So you do get to make the choice as an AHJ, but if you're checking that box and someone is brand new to the fire service, like 1 month in, and you check that box and you submit a firefighter 1 certificate, you're falsifying that documentation, and that's punishable by revocation and sometimes by law. So I wouldn't say it completely doesn't matter, as long as there is, like, you're checking that box and you can explain away the 6 month period.
Right.
But there's no way you can explain, submitting a documentation for someone who is a month in, you have no proof, that that person was at your department before that, things like that. So that would be that's the, like, yes, it's up to the AHJ, and it is a requirement because it's on the application and it is an Oregon administrative rule, but we're just being pretty lenient and leaving up to the AHJ to determine what that 6 month is.
Right.
But it has to be explainable.
But there's no standard. So one training officer can say, hey, I think this person knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna go ahead and sign off that they've done 6 months, even though they've only done 5. And another training officer could look at them and say, yeah, that's just not acceptable. They don't meet our standard.
They
And
cannot check, if they've only done 5, they cannot check that box and submit the application. If they are doing that, that is a problem.
That's what I'm getting at. So it is a 6 month requirement. Where does that 6 months start? And I think that's where the question originates from. Is it 6 months from the time they start the department, 6 months from the time they finish
And that's
academy?
the part that is up to the AHJ. We're not gonna be in people's business about when they started at the department, when they finished an academy. That's the part that's completely up to the AHJ, as long as they have that documentation and they can explain, this is when that 6 months started, this is our policy, or this is our kind of internal procedure about when to submit this application.
Because that's also gonna look very different depending on which agency you go to, what capacity or you're working in, or what you get to do. If you're brand new at one agency is gonna look very different from another. So having that, it's not that timeline doesn't matter, but given, okay, they've been with your agency for 5 months, but they were a firefighter for 20 years in another state, you can be comfortable that they have 6 months of experience. But it gives you the flexibility to also be like, nope, they don't have that 6 months experience. If we remove that, then we are definitely going to get people who are just, okay, I'm done with my training, I'm ready.
Yeah, and we do receive phone calls of people who are upset that they have to wait that 6 months and a year for firefighter 1 and 2. So, just to put it into a little bit of perspective, so there are fire departments out there that would be applying for certifications that are less than that 6 month or a year time frame, which is fine. It's totally up to you guys if you want to have that on the application or not. I would and because I would say that some fire departments are upset about that, even though it's up to them when they start that time period. Because they are upset, if we put more parameters on it, they will be upset. But it's up to you.
Yeah, I don't think we should get rid of it, and the chiefs I talked to in Lincoln County didn't think we should get rid of it. There's a recruit class going on right now, and it's a pretty compressed one, 2 months. They're doing pretty much every weekend. But we have one of our people in there who previously had some fire experience. We can't really validate what that was. So we've told him he's got to wait the 6 months even after the academy. And I'm a little grumbling, but it's his problem. He can grumble all he wants. We're not moving off the dime. And we're using you guys, so thank you for that. But we probably would do that even if it wasn't on the form, but it makes it much more cleaner and universal with it being on the check sheet, so.
Well, I don't disagree with the 6 months and 1 year. I'm just saying that I think there needs to be a standard set, whether it's 6 months from the time they go onto your roster or 6 months after academy. I think that's what gives us the assistance in our risk and liability to be able to say, this is the standard across Oregon. And so that's,
Put that in your policy.
Yeah,
yes, you put it in your policy, but we're talking about EPSST certification. And if we're asking for everybody to have a standard across the board, which is why we're looking at NFPA, if it's on there, why is it not set as a standard?
Let's look at this from a small volunteer department standard. You get onesie, twosies in, right? You get one person 1 month, one person another, a couple months later maybe, and you start them on IFSA, and they start online IFSA, and it takes them a while to get through it. Now, if I say it's from the end of when you finish IFSA for firefighter 1, yeah, but if it's from, the authority having jurisdiction does give us that wiggle room that we need. And everybody's right. I mean, it's your internal controls. If you have a policy that says it's 6 months from the date of acceptance or hire, for certification. It is what it is. I mean, hell, even my transfers, we talked about lateral transfers, folks coming in with experience, I still make them do 3 months before they can respond. Because it gives them 3 months to figure out what we do in our department.
Right.
Not what they do in Astoria or what they do in Pacific County Fire District 1 or wherever they're coming from. It's what they do in Napa.
And those, as long as those expectations are spelled out in the beginning, as they come on, and we do that in the interview process, like, here's the program. This is laid out in front of you right now.
You wanna go on medical calls? These are the 5 chapters you have to do in IFSA.
Yep.
And you have to complete this. You have to complete your first aid CPR at a minimum before you can even think about coming and just doing a chart on our call. It is what it is.
And it's all laid out at the beginning. And as an agency, that's it within our policy. And we actually go a year before we're gonna apply for the firework.
Yeah.
Even though it's 6 months with DPSCT, we're saying, you're gonna do a year, you're gonna complete your year of probation. At that point, then we'll apply for it. So we want you around here for at least a year. We're gonna get you experience. We're gonna, run you through our program. And I really feel confident at that point, signing off somebody for the firefighter 1.
It's harder to get a firefighter 1 sometimes than it is to like get a driver.
Right.
It just is. I mean, and that makes sense. Driver, is a little different than, and the type
You in class, and you got it.
Yeah, and you go through the DAS book. But firefighter 1 is a bunch of stuff. It's a big thing, and
As it should
makes
be.
sense. Yeah, as it should be. That makes sense.
I think everybody here has got the same concept of that, but what about the other rural departments that are not the same thing? I'm the same way. I do a year before they get signed off as a firefighter 1. But if we're setting a minimum standard, if we say, this is what you have to have in order to apply for this, if it's 6 months on the department or 6 months, at least that's trying to keep a minimum standard across the board to the smaller departments that may not be at the same level that we're at in this room. We're trying to decide for the entire state of Oregon. And that's why I'm saying I think we almost need to set a minimum standard, whatever it is, 6 months on the roster, 6 months after academy. If we set that, then what we're holding is every other department to the same minimum standard. And we're setting what that minimum standard is. We're not saying that 6 months your choice. If we have that 6 months, but you say, I'm not gonna certify you for a year, that's great, that's your department policy. We have to follow our department policies. But what is that minimum we're gonna set across the board for the state of Oregon for those positions?
I feel like we're kind of beating a dead horse here. I don't know if anyone else feels that way, but I was wondering, is this something we could vote on continuing to discuss or to bring to a head and does that vote on and move on, or I don't know if anyone else feels that way.
Chairman. We could go through and by vote, decide who likes the 3, 6, and 9 months, and then from there we can revisit it at the end if we don't have a majority. That's what I would say to do.
3, 6, 1.
Yeah, 3, 6, 12. Yeah, 3, 6, 12.
Kind of written as it, well, you can if anyone wants to entertain a motion too.
I think we'll all agree with that. I think we're just trying to define what that one is, right?
I don't think you can.
Yeah.
You can't, because it's subjective. How many calls does your agency run in a year?
We run 450.
450, okay. Mine runs 1,000, right? So in 6 months, a firefighter in my organization may get a lot more exposure. I'm not gonna say they're gonna get more experience, but they're gonna get exposure to the potential to get more experience, right? So then we'll take an organization that is close to where I am at, Drake's Crossing, who runs 80 calls a year, right? They're not gonna, in 6 months, are they gonna get the same experience they're gonna get at your organization, or Kurt's organization, or any of these? That we can't say, hey, you have to, 6 months is very subjective. Really measuring something that's also subjective. Experience comes back to the age.
And we've had that thing as well where, I had a volunteer. This is a good example. She started at one agency in the county. I taught her in the recruit academy. She was there for 5 months. And then she moved out to our district. So after a month, what did she have? 6 months in the fire service. Now she was a lateral. We made her do another 2 or another 3. before I let her respond, but I mean, I could certify her after that 1 month, which was absolutely reasonable, because she had that time in, she had done the paperwork, she had 6 months in. And that gave me the flexibility to do that, is by saying, based on the authority having jurisdiction. If we set, my concern is if we set a drop dead standard from the end of an academy, well, there's gonna be some people that are never gonna get certified, period.
And what do you measure? I mean, cause
Yeah.
my agency, they could go 2 years and have a couple fires, you know, whereas one of your agencies, you go a month and have 2 fires. I mean, so time isn't a really good measurement. And yes, we've certainly killed this horse a couple times.
Yeah, if I set up when I set up my training calendar, I'm gonna be honest, if a person comes to every drill for 2 years, they will finally meet their firefighter 1 standards after 2 years.
Right.
Somebody really wants to hit it and hammer it hard, they come in extra, or they come in and they do IFSA stuff. But if they, you know, it may take 2 years for me to certify with firefighter 1, but at least they got the 6 months in.
That's true. So am I hearing that most people like to leave it up to the authority having jurisdiction to determine what that 1 year, and potentially 3 months means?
I make a motion that we leave the verbiage the way it is and add a 3-month, experience to the support person, up to the AHJ, being, again, the exact verbiage, but does the applicant possess 3 months of experience to applying for certification determined by the AHJ?
Have a motion?
I'll second that.
Okay. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. Okay.
Do we want to take a break?
Yeah,
I think we should do it.
Okay.
Can't say we didn't validate that conversation.
Gotta make sure we have enough conversation to get through this.
Can you guys hear?
Yeah, I can hear just fine.
Great. Okay. So just to pick up where we left off, we had a motion and a second to include the 3-month per AHJ, 6-month per AHJ, and 1 year per AHJ on the application for support person, firefighter 1 and firefighter 2. And so kind of the other points that we had wanted to talk about, it sounds like we are moving towards adding support person, so we can do a motion for that when we go to vote to adopt the standard. But the EMS requirement language, I know we had kind of touched on that, and I did speak with Brendan about this as well, and it looks like that language is included in the application because it looks like if the firefighters are expected to provide any sort of EMS services, then they need to meet one of those standards. But that it's not necessarily a requirement for a firefighter who would not be expected to provide any. But since it's per the AHJ, if the firefighter does not ever provide any EMS requirements, then they technically wouldn't need to have. So that kind of covers all the bases. But again, it's up to you guys. If we want to discuss removing it, we can. But just wanted to go over that and make sure everybody understood why it was there. It was a little bit trickier to find with this updated standard than it was previously.
Did you ever find it in the standard?
Did I?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the new standard?
Yes, I did. Let me see what page.
Because it talks about it in chapter 10, but there's no, it doesn't talk and say
Yeah.
it in chapter 6.
And I know FEMA wrestled with this on the AFG applications and probably went back to the area agency having jurisdiction, or whatever your standard was, because they got hit pretty hard by trying to make a national requirement for EMS requirements for.
I think, for me,
I like the way it's written personally, but just, the only thing I would say is if it's not, like right now it says as defined in 1001, that little section might, if we can't find a specific spot in the standard that says per this, then we just need to say as defined by, minimum requirements for emergency medical services as defined or as determined by the AHJ.
Yeah.
We can't say this chapter, this section.
Yes, that 10.1.
Because otherwise, okay.
Yeah, so the way that this, because they decided to combine all these standards together, now chapter 4 has all the general requirements, so.
And I didn't find anything in chapter 4, and if you look at the 1001 in the chapter, whatever chapter it was,
so.
it said meet this EMS requirement per this.
Yeah.
There's not anything in chapter 4 that it talks about emergency medical services on its own, but not as related to your firefighter cert.
Yeah.
So if you're certified as an EMT, then.
In the Annex A on page 37, A 1042.
Again, that goes back to chapter, so if you go into chapter 4, it's, so just do the firefighter 1.
4, 6.
It says 4 and 6. So there's no relationship to chapter 10. 10's where it defines it, but it doesn't actually say anywhere in the actual NFPA standard. I think we need to have that. I think it's appropriate to have it, but I think we probably need to say as defined by, or as determined by HJ without the saying as defined in NFPA 1010, because it's not actually specified. I mean, there was one piece of language that I found it in the 1001 that actually said you will meet this standard.
I mean, it just, so you're saying that just says.
It's under, that's meets chapter 10. If you go over to, so like firefighter 1, chapter 6 will identify the minimum. And if you go into the purpose part, where was it?
Josh online.
Josh.
There was another, I'm trying to remember where I saw it, right here. Or no, it was in the first part.
Chapter
The
6.
chapters. So if you go to chapter 6.
Hey, Josh.
Well, the closest I could find was the 4.4.6.2, where it talks about the AHA, the minimum EMS level for AHA requiring the EMS stuff.
And I think the point of that was just that if the firefighter is expected to give any sort of emergency medical service, then they have to meet one of the requirements in chapter 10.
Yeah, no, and I'm with Gabe. I'm for leaving it in. We just got to find the reference on the application like it talks about in the previous ones.
Yeah, in the previous application, we had it referenced to, I believe it was chapter 6. And then in this one, in the new version of the application, it would just reference chapter 10. I don't think that because in the general requirements, it says we're meeting the general requirements of chapter 4. So then after the training section, there's then the question about the EMS requirements per the AHJ, and that refers to chapter 10. So that kind of should cover both chapter 4's general requirements and chapter 10's EMS requirements specifically. And we'll be able to see that in the application when we bring that up here.
So look at the minimum.
And so
is
you're not gonna, the application that, oh, sorry.
Yeah.
As long as they have that, and they meet the minimum, and it's above the AHJ determine how much above.
Yep, and I mean, they
CPR
could honestly have, it's whatever the AHJ is determining based on what level of care they're gonna be providing.
Is there any organizations out there that don't even require CPR, they just want firefighter with no EMS? That wouldn't be able to meet that minimum? I don't know if there is or not.
I don't know, but I think that if they're, from how I am understanding it, that if they're not going to be providing any sort of care, then they don't need to have that.
They should just remove the NFPA chapter 10.
I would say that's the way, because if you look at the 1001, 1.3.1131, which would be part of the firefighter standard, that's where it says minimum meet entry level emergency medical care validated by AHJ. That's where that's at in the 1001 standard. There is not an equivalent that I can find of that statement anywhere in 1010.
Don't we all think they should have first aid CPR?
I think so. And I'm not against, I want to keep that language there, but I also think we need to change it and just say, as determined by HJ, not reference a definition in NFPA.
Because if you reference NFPA minimum requirements for state, right? And I don't have a problem with that. I don't mind that, but there may be departments out there in Oregon that I'm not aware of that we don't go on medical calls.
I think that effectively going on medical calls, we provide first aid to our own guys. We may have to provide services to our own crew, so at least first aid should be required of anybody getting that certification.
Yeah, you don't even need to be dispatched, you can be a walk.
I'm just talking for discussion points.
Yeah.
And I agree that, you may not run EMS calls, but they have to be able to, at least be able to provide at least first aid to our own crews if we get injured on scene. At least an initial response.
Well, if it's in per AHJ, your AHJ doesn't do any EMS, you can say per AHJ then.
It's just based, and so the way that it's written is personnel assigned the duties of emergency medical services. So if you don't respond to any sort of medical things, then you would not be required to meet the chapter 10.
Aren't we required to have first aid, oxygen, and AEDs on apparatus?
No.
And what am I wrong on 1908? It's not in there. I think it says medical kit and oxygen. And you would think that would require somebody to be able to administer first aid. But memories could be going. I don't think so.
I think you're probably right, but I don't know, man. It's not a problem we have.
What they respond POD.
That's something I really mean.
Yeah, and I mean, that's why.
You carry oxygen on your records?
Previously, that's why it was
They even
worded the way
reference
it was, because it's up to date.
When they're in district, when they're in district, yeah.
Then that list, the minimum is CPR. So if we're gonna say even in AHJ, we list chapter 10 in there, chapter 10 and lists levels of training, and default is first aid minimum, so.
First thing, first aid CPR.
If you're, again, it refers back to personnel that are assigned those duties.
Yeah, so in the previous.
That's a bad word.
Well, that's what the NFPA standard says. So the previous 2019 edition says personnel assigned the duties related to emergency medical services.
It's essentially the same, it's just split up in different chapters, as it was before, which is why it's still written the way that it was previously in my draft application. It's just they made it harder to find.
Yeah, it's the same but more confusing.
Yeah.
Cool.
And we were adding that to the support person also, right?
If that's something that we want to, we can. It would just basically be that if they are assigned
It's the
any sort of medical
It's the
duties.
glitch right there. Person who may be performing.
Where are you reading from? Where you guys assigned?
Oh, sorry. This is in the chapter 4, which is on page 1010-10. On the right column in the very middle,
What number is
4.4.6, and then that sentence was 4.4.6.1.
The very next one says it shall be developed and validated by the AHJ.
Mm-hmm.
Does that sound reasonable to leave it the same language?
Yeah.
Okay, based on what it says in the standard?
Great.
Okay. Okay. Well, are there any other?
Did we answer the point about support personnel?
I thought we could include adding that as part of the motion to adopt the standard, but we can also make it another motion if you prefer, if it's its own motion. Those covered the main points that I had. Does anybody else have any changes or anything that they feel strongly about? Okay.
I like the point that they could be answering the phone out of the.
Well, yeah, I think now it's fire department equipment, rather than phones, and it probably was fax
Radios
machines at one point.
And this and that, yeah, just.
Yeah.
Kind of miss it already though. No.
I can tell people in pencil, look at that, I can't count the number of fire departments I call where somebody answers go, hello?
I know, yeah. That's the thing is that people are, you make fun of it being in the standard, but they're bad at it.
Yeah, no, they meet the I mean, they answered the phone, and if you don't have a policy on how you're gonna answer the phone.
Who's this? Well, who's this? They had that years ago with the CTY.
Typewriter.
All right.
I just don't answer the phone.
So does anyone want to propose a motion to include support person and to adopt the 1010 edition of the standard?
So moved.
Okay, so we need someone to do, so Kurt, you're doing the motion?
I'll motion.
Okay. And who wants to second?
I'll second.
Okay. Sorry, I
That's fine.
stole your job.
All those in favor say aye. All those opposed?
Aye.
Okay, great.
Motion carried.
All right.
That was a fun part. Now you just get to review forms and stuff, right? Which I don't know how exciting that is.
What other
But
standards do you wanna tackle today while we're here?
what?
What other standards do you wanna tackle?
Oh yeah, we have a whole slew of standards, so we want to just
We're gonna be doing a
knock
lot of
those out.
these. Yeah, there's gonna be a lot of these.
As you can see by your book.
Yeah. Okay, so next up is the application part. So let me bring this up on the screen. Bear with me here for a minute. And then if you want to look at the draft application in your books, they're on page 138. And then the one with support person is going to be page 140. Oh, no, hold on.
So I know before, Brooke, you were talking about how much of a pain it would be with the support thing and people going backwards. Are we going to make the standalone one its own certification and not on the firefighter one, or would you suggest just leaving it all together?
Yeah, that's something we can definitely talk about. I don't think it's gonna hurt if it is its own. Can you guys see this online?
It's kind of cropped a little bit, but I've got my book here, so I'm good that way with looking through here.
Okay, it's showing up. I'll make it smaller. Maybe.
Close your navigation box there at the side, it'll make it bigger for them.
Sorry, what?
If you close the navigation box, it'll make it bigger for them.
Okay.
And where it says navigation, off to
yeah.
your left, yeah.
There we go. And then I think
Okay, F11.
F11 hides all your tools, so.
okay. No. Okay.
I think he's gonna do a good job.
I think it looks different. They're seeing a much more cropped down version, I believe. Okay. How does that look online for you guys? Can you see it okay? Or is it too close?
I can make do.
Is that better?
Right there. That's perfect.
Okay, so we're gonna get a little bit closer. Sorry. But I think you should still be able to make out everything on the application. This is oddly like off center on my side of things. Okay. So the application itself, oh, sorry, this is gonna drive me crazy. Pretty much remained the same. The general requirements are updated. This is support person. So this just reflects what the standard says in 1010 for chapter 5. So it's still the hazmat awareness training requirement. So they don't have to be certified, but just like firefighter 1, they do have to have the hazmat training. This one's only awareness, and then we just broke it down, the components, into the different requirements that I found in this chapter. Are there any questions or thoughts about that?
The only thought I had would be for 533, which is establish and operate protected work areas, would just be to add / traffic control. I think that's a huge part. It's like one of the most dangerous things that we do, and it's not really that emphasized in my opinion in here. And I just thought that might just help emphasize at least what I read is the intent of that, or part of the intent of it. But I'm open to others, either way.
Yeah. Okay, so we could add that in here, maybe. Oh.
What section were you referring to?
5.3.3, established protected work area.
The weird part is, so 6.3.3, which would be the equivalent of the firefighter one, actually does say traffic and scene control instead of just scene control.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what clued me in on it.
I mean, this says scene control devices.
But it doesn't really, the only thing it says is very briefly vehicle traffic. I just thought it would maybe be good to just kind of highlight that a little more, like, hey, let's make, I don't know.
Maybe like scene and traffic control being what it's called?
Yeah, sure.
It would fall in traffic control, would fall under stabilization as well. Just in my mind.
Which,
Under 5.3 on the 1010.
oh, but the car.
Which is the sheet, yeah, for support.
Yeah, it's,
Okay.
yeah, equipment and scene control devices, yes, are used, yep. I think that, I feel like it talks, like, when I'm reading this, I'm thinking a lot about traffic control, but it just doesn't really say that much about it, so, I don't know.
It's, to me, it's very vague, but it also covers our fire ground if they're gonna be setting up.
Exactly.
Scene. So whether it's fire ground scene or NFPA scene,
Mhm.
and I think it captures it, but it's just how we interpret, how we read it, and interpret what it's saying. To me, scene control means NVA, fire doesn't really matter still, that they should have training in.
I agree, 100%, I just wanted to highlight it a little, that's all, but I'm not like tied to it or anything, I just wanted to like throw that out there.
So I feel like it's written well as far as the application goes. I think that what your comment goes more towards when we start talking about the different curriculums is making sure that that is a part of the curriculum that's adopted. But I think for the application, saying yes, they've completed this particular part of the curriculum, which should include that, but I think that's the way it, looking at the other applications that are out there for the different certifications, the way that that's worded compared to the standard, makes sense.
Okay.
So will there be a task book associated with this to where that can be our task book?
That is something we will also need to discuss. So did we wanna just leave this as is, or do we want to add like scene control or?
I think it's, the way it's worded, if we're just going through the 1010, because that's, to me, that's one chapter of the curriculum that would be included, and each JPR kind of gets its own part of that.
Okay.
I think it's worded the right way for the application.
Okay. Okay.
Maybe we need to put a little bit more in the guide regarding that, but.
Yeah.
Some reference to TIM curriculum or that extreme or?
I think Tim's would meet that requirement, obviously, but does anybody do the full? I think I've knocked mine down to about a 4-hour version or less compared to the full 8 or whatever that I originally had to take.
Okay.
I think that Tim's could be definitely part of that curriculum, but as adopted by the.
Or recommended curriculum.
Yeah.
And then we talked about adding this, so I can just edit this down to 3 months. Do we want to, so we want to have the EMS requirement on there, and that's just AHJ, so even if it's first aid CPR, that's fine. Does everybody agree about that? Okay. And then we.
Make that, for, instead of 6 months?
Yeah, I'm making it 3.
3.
Yeah. Maybe if I can.
Will it let you do it if you hit editing on top?
It will, it's just that I have to do it up here with the mouse and I keep going here. Yeah. There may be a way to fix that, I just not sure. Okay, so do we want a task book and the option for task performance evaluation. And do we want to require training, or do we just want it to be a task book? It sounds like we wanted training, but I just want to make sure.
I'm not with task
I'm talking about training,
training,
like
so I
classroom
probably shouldn't weigh in here.
Yeah.
Something to go in addition to the hands-on
Mhm.
portion.
Yes. I would say yes, we need to have a training requirement for it, and I do like the idea of a task book.
Task performance evaluation, we do have the option to remove that. Essentially they would just be doing 5 tasks of this. We can leave it. It's up to.
I think you leave it the TPE, because there's a lot of districts like Dave that don't like task books and they go TPEs for everything.
Okay.
So.
Then I come back to our DLO to decide how we.
Well, the big thing's gonna be, we're gonna have to have TPEs to issue out.
That's a
And the
DLO
TP, no, it's not. That's a, because they come from them, probably. Well, I mean, you guys are the keeper of the I mean, we pick them.
Yeah.
But we get the stuff that they do from, hopefully from you guys.
Oh, well, it comes from the
Yeah.
standard.
Yeah, it comes from the standard, so,
Which a lot of these standards are taken out of the firefighter one.
yeah,
Yeah.
but not, just not, not necessarily the full, so like, the PPE one, the SCD ones are gonna be a little different, I mean, respiratory practice, those will be a little different, but, I mean, I think it's modifiable, and any DLO worth their salt is not gonna have a problem picking out ones that are appropriate.
Yeah.
Okay,
So you're gonna
so
have trouble.
I think if we do put this as
Call me to get their stuff.
if we do put this as its own application, it would pretty much just look like this, and then it would have the signature stuff down at the bottom. Are there any other requirements that you feel are missing, or anything that needs to be added, or? Okay. And then I haven't built the task book for this one yet, so I'll go through and we just take everything directly from the NFPA for the task book, so there's not really much editing or choice that goes into that.
Oh, it does say chapter 10. I could see that at first. Okay. Yeah.
Basically, your choice for the task book is how many boxes.
Yeah, how many times do you want to make them do these tasks?
One box.
One.
Okay.
And if we're only gonna do one for firefighter one, then definitely only one for this.
Firefighter one after is support draft.
I have to answer the phone for
This is the one with the support person, so it.
No, you have to transfer 3 times.
Um,
Oh,
Then
yeah,
we-
that's.
I'll edit this so that they're 2 separate ones. No, you're fine.
I know.
Just hang up and call back.
Okay, so then, moving on to firefighter 1.
This stuff.
The changes in this one, let's see if there was anything exciting. I just kind of tried to clarify the language for hazmat awareness and mission specific. We over the past couple of years, we've gotten a lot of questions about this. And then also tried to clarify all of these chapters, and that then some of these chapters are from another standard. So chapter 4 is the general requirements, and then chapter 6 is the firefighter 1, and that's all part of 1010. And then chapter 7 and 9 are from NFPA 470, which got another standard update to do. I don't think there were any additions on this application.
And those are the same hazmat requirements as last
Yeah,
time.
yeah,
So-
it's all the same. That just the number of the standard has updated, and they've consolidated
We went back to refer to
1072
470 instead
and
of
472. Yeah.
whatever it is.
They're doing some fun things. Okay, so here we have the EMS requirements, the task book, task performance evaluation, and then the 6-month. We'll just leave all of that if everybody's in agreement. Okay.
So if rescue operations is not applicable, do we even need that there? 6.4?
It's referenced in this,
Oh.
content standard,
Yeah,
saying that there is nothing in there.
the book has it in there, so we just
Okay.
are leaving it in there, I guess, to make it uniform.
You'll have someone complain if it jumps from 6.3 to 6.5 without a 6.4. Well, what's 6.4? What am I supposed to do?
Wow.
Okay, so then firefighter 2, the general requirements, those are just edited to match the first sentence of 7.1. Oh, actually, I need to edit that. For some reason that didn't transfer over. So that 7.1 box will read the for qualifications as firefighter 2, the candidate shall meet the requirements of chapter 4, 6, and 7. Meaning that they'll have to have all the prerequisite work from firefighter 1 and the hazmat awareness. And then I added the thermal imaging component. That was the only new JPRs that were added to firefighter 2. Unless anybody else noticed anything significant. And then the prerequisite of firefighter 1 being one of these check boxes, then the firefighter 2 or a task book or TPE, and then the 1 year of experience. And the rest looks pretty much the same as it always does. Any other thoughts, feelings?
Make a motion we approve it as it reads.
What?
Make a motion we approve it as it reads.
Okay.
Do you want to do the support person as a standalone?
I don't think so.
Second.
We want to leave it on the application with all 3 of them?
What's easiest for you? I think for, at least as a training officer, it's not gonna make a big difference. Which, I mean, I'm gonna download the form as needed as.
I think it may be
What's
easier
best
to
for
make
you?
it its own thing, because, well, this application is getting a little bit long. And the more stuff on one application, the more room for error, but, if it's in its own section, we could have, support person on our website, and then above it, we could also have like a blurb about what this level is for, so that it's a little bit more obvious before they get in and they just start filling it out. Support person, firefighter 1, firefighter 2.
I think when we get to the guide, I think when we get into the guide for certification, it should all be one support person with firefighter. But the application, I mean, you're basically at one just within that. I mean, you're almost starting your firefighter 1 on the next page anyways, so you may as well just.
Yeah, it could just
It would
be
make sense
its
to
own
keep its
thing.
own form and then your firefighter 1, 2, like it's always been.
I think that will eliminate some confusion for some training officers that, oh, we gotta do all this before we get into fire 1. Yeah.
You may have to be a little more intentional about applying for it.
So do you print them out?
Yes.
So does that make more paper you're printing every time?
I make less paper because it's a single page instead of a 3-page application for every firefighter 1 and firefighter 2.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I probably, again, I think the intentionality of having to like go into this application specifically and fill it out, and it may create more paper, but yeah, I mean, the longer that we make the applications, that also adds more paper too, so.
So it's like if somebody applies for firefighter 1, then firefighter 2, it's printing that twice.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's no way to electronically sign these like the BOSS system used to be.
Yeah, there actually is. Yeah, so we do have an online submission system that allows you to sign electronically online with so it essentially skips.
Just like a PDF signature kind of thing.
Well, so there's actually 2 options. So there is a PDF version, you can sign this electronically and then have the applicant sign it electronically and send that off to us. But similar to the BOSS system, our online system allows you to check an attestation online that you have notified the applicant that a background check is going to be done. So you can you essentially type your name in, and then when it comes to us, we see who the signer was and that attestation is on file. So, yeah. And
So that works for both the applicant and us if we do the activation?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. So our in case you hadn't seen it, we do have a new online submission system, and if anybody is curious about how to use that, I'm happy to walk through that with you.
Sometime.
Yes, offline here.
You walk through it after the task force.
Yeah.
For anyone who wants to see it.
Yeah.
I think I like it 2 separate certifications. I think Brooke is right. It leaves some intentionality to the support person, and then also inevitably we will get applications for firefighter 1 with everything filled out, support person and firefighter 1, whether people mean to or not. So I think making it more purposeful to actually go to the support person application would be helpful. And then we're also not, for everyone, I mean, firefighter 1 is one of our most common applications, so we wouldn't be getting that page printed that first page of the support person printed every single time.
Sounds like a good idea.
I like it. And then it's easier to explain, you know, like, yeah, it'll be easier for us to kind of communicate with the fire service that support person isn't for everyone. It's not for everyone who has a firefighter 1. It's for those folks that, you know, want to help out and they want to be a part of the fire department but don't want to, you know, make entry and things like that. So.
Okay, so we've kind of, I think probably consensus is fine to determine that support person could be a separate page, since we've included it as a certification. Do we want to do a motion and a second to have the application kind of as it's written?
I make a motion that it is with that one edit to 7.1 that you said you need to make, but I make a motion to adopt with that correction.
I have a motion to adopt the firefighter 1 and 2 application with the change to 7.1 to be completed by Brooke. Go a second.
I was hoping someone else would do it.
By name and title.
Second.
Kevin seconds.
Okay.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Carried.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Now what's on your list?
Okay, now we have the task book. Let me save this real quick. Hopefully it will save. Okay.
So just up front, as I was saying earlier, because these are copy and pasted from the NFPA standard and we have their permission to do so, we actually can't change any of the language in the actual task book. So we don't have to go line by any means and change anything in the task book. Really, it's basically kind of to make sure that, you know, we still want to stick with one checkbox and things like that. And then also stick with things like that the signature page. Yeah.
Is that new wording on, above the task force assigned to the designation as the department head?
Yes. So I added a couple things, hopefully to help some of the confusion. I get a lot of calls from people being like, well, my chief signed off on my rope rescue. And just generally speaking, like just because you're the chief doesn't necessarily mean you're qualified to sign off on specific tasks. So I just added this, hoping that
I've argued this for years. I'm so happy we're doing it now.
just that it would clarify that just designation as the training officer or department head is not approval for signing off on the specific tasks themselves. But they can sign off on this page, basically verifying that they've confirmed who signed off on the tasks and that the task book is complete.
We can sign off on the requisite knowledge, though we can't sign off on the task, correct?
If you're qualified to teach the requisite knowledge.
If they go, I mean, yeah, you'd have to be qualified to teach it, but if they go to a class, a qualified, DPSST level class, and they come back with no task books, then, I mean, I've always let people, like the training officer, the chief, sign on the requisite knowledge based on the fact that they went to that class.
Mm-hmm.
If your department is good with that.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question on that? Is the requisite knowledge box basically repetitive to what's on the application? Because you're using the application breakdown to show that they attended class and received requisite knowledge, and then you flip open the task book, and you have to again certify that they had requisite knowledge as well as doing the task. Is that really necessary to do it twice? Most people signing the task book weren't present for the requisite knowledge portion. So they're pencil whipping that box.
Task book, I see for us that the task book is the firefighters' book. They're responsible for carrying it. So if they leave your department, go someplace else, then it shows, hey, somebody signed off saying that I've got the schoolwork part of it done.
They still have to show that they have the schoolwork done when they turn it in.
Right, but then you can just take it from their task book where it's been provided. To me, I'd say leave it there, it'd be fine, but to me, the task book goes with the person where the application's mine.
Maybe Caleb can speak to this.
I mean,
If
that's a
someone
really
does it in-house.
interesting point that I've never considered that.
Because the knock, right,
Yeah.
would be the
Yeah.
requisite knowledge proof.
It's just one more, check to make sure.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's like, yeah.
It's one more check.
But I guess if you it is one more check, and sometimes people do these things in a really long period of time. So, you could have somebody who's completing their firefighter 1 or 2 task book and training over, a year or 2. So, they also might be kind of cobbling together knocks and training. So yes, it is probably a bit redundant. But then I guess also if somebody goes to a training and they come back with the requisite knowledge stuff signed off, you can verify that too. I mean, I guess it doesn't hurt anything. Yes, it is somewhat redundant. I'm trying to think of the second we get rid of it, we're gonna realize oh, this is why we didn't do this.
So the TPE instead of a task book, the TPE doesn't say anything about requisite knowledge.
Right.
So having it on the application makes us go back to
So-
they've had the requisite knowledge.
Not so much on the firefighter. Not so much on the firefighter 1, but I know on firefighter 2, there's a lot of stuff that once they've completed, say flag, because that's such a hard, you only get that maybe once a year opportunity. So even if they're not complete, say the rescue part of things, but that means that they have to have the requisite knowledge for the flag portion, even though they haven't had everything else, and make sure that they have the requisite knowledge before they have their task performance sign off on that. So I can see where it kind of benefits but at the same time, we're putting the dates that they did the knock on the application. So I can kind of see it from both ways, but I don't think it's really
does everybody use the task book? Is there anybody here who doesn't use the task book? Okay.
A little bit. Maybe just
We use
for my firefighter one, and then the task book for everything else.
A lot of it depends on, for me, it depends on how many people I have at the time. So if I get an influx of a bunch of people and I run through firefighter one at the same time, it makes a lot of sense for me to do a TPE instead of doing 6 individual task books. But if I get, like I said before, onesie twosies,
Right.
they're gonna run through a task book. And a task book seems to turn out a good product for me, because it takes forever for them to seems like to get this filled out.
Has there been discussion about a timeline with task books? I know like NWCG, you have to get it done in
Years.
3 years. But no time frame associated with this. Is there any discussion on that or what that would look like, or is that intentional?
I mean, technically the time frame is within the standard updates.
Yeah, it's been intentional to leave it also a little bit more open, just because there are, there's those departments that with volunteers and they're small and it might take them a while to get through a task book. So technically, yes, when a new standard updates, we give people a year to complete the task book. But even then, we'll allow them to transfer some of the old tasks to the new task book per agency jurisdiction if they really want to do that. But our recommendation is kind of like along the NWCG lines, like don't have a task book open for a really long time, because what's the point of that? Is this person ever going to apply for a certification? So I mean, generally our recommendation when people call and ask about a timeline is like, just be reasonable.
Some of those task books, not the ones we're talking about today, take a very long time.
Inspector task book.
Inspector, investigator, some of those ones just take forever, especially if you don't get a lot of stuff.
And even some of the wildlife ones, engine boss, if you're not working with a chopper on a regular basis.
Come to Moss, just saying.
Come to Nels, you actually light things on fire. Let's compare. But I mean, it's but there's all, even 310-1 has outs on now.
Yeah.
I mean, you can move stuff forward if the book outdates and stuff like that. So
The advantage of it is you can open that book, and I don't agree with it, but prior to coursework, and NFPA, you have to wait till the coursework's done before you can open it. That's what I've been told anyways, by my DLO.
Yeah, that's general practice that we recommend. Because it's not a great idea to just be sending people to do tasks, but there's actually nothing in rule about that.
Don't tell my people that.
I won't tell them.
Yeah.
Just between you and me and the internet.
I know that one person is going to be signed in right now. Let's not adjust that.
Next time you're in
I'm sure they're all watching.
Yeah, rapt attention. Yeah, that's the general recommendation that people do the training, and that's with any level. Even though it is allowed with NWCG, we don't recommend that. But in some situations, it does make sense for that to happen. Okay, so as far as is everybody okay with the statements on the task book signing page? And then do we still want to have the firefighter one signature page? So this is where each evaluator signs off so that okay. And then we want to continue with just one box. Okay.
Yes.
I'm gonna ponder now what you said. I'm more comfortable leaving the boxes in there for now for requisite knowledge, but you kind of blew my mind, so I'm gonna ponder that.
I feel like every time I work through them, I'm like, there's basically, like for 6.2.1, there's only one box, but there are 3 boxes. There's a task, there's requisite knowledge, and there's requisite skill, which is just always feels redundant to me.
Yeah.
I believe the instructor has the requisite knowledge taken, the boxes are taken out. One of the instructor certifications.
Actually, that one maybe wouldn't be bad, leave the wording there, but just not have the signature box, or the initial box.
it's just one more catch. But I don't see, it's never been an obstacle. I mean, the big thing, I'll be honest, is we need to educate our instructors better, that when they're issuing knocks and stuff, they're working on this thing at the same time. Because I can't count the number of people, it doesn't necessarily happen with a firefighter 1 or 2, but when I send somebody to like a pumper operator class, and they come back and they've got 2 things signed off in them, and then I was like, you spent 2 weekends in this class. Where's all of your requisite knowledge? Why isn't it filled out? Oh, you wouldn't fill it out. Well, no, because that's the point of the whole darn class. Let's get that filled out.
Yeah.
Should we put something on the
I mean,
we can write something on the task book for that.
What you're suggesting is that if I teach a class for 20 students, I have to sign 400 boxes in everyone's task book.
You have a stamp.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to do that.
Sorry, for that.
That's the only reason I became a DLO, is I wanted to stay on.
Your page has to be there, but your initials in the box can be just your initial, doesn't say you have to have assigned initials.
So you have to
On this
initial
page
one.
here, where you have your initials, your stamp goes there, you put your DPSSD number, you sign it, and that's how it matches up.
I mean, that's what the Knox for.
You fill out one and you make, copies and hand it to.
Yeah, but some comes in with a half of a completed, and you turn it in, because it's the second time you're taking that class. I've done that on the wildland side all the time, like printed out 30 type 2 task books, and then I threw them all out because everybody's was different.
Well, and if they go to a class and they get an NOCC, can't you just write that in there? NOCC, C snapshot,
I just write the date and initial.
as opposed to
People
having the
aren't
instructor
generally
initial?
submitting, we don't require that people submit the task books, and
Right.
just for sake of space, we also would prefer not to have them submitted to us. But
I mean, for your own internal records, when the DLO goes
yes,
out.
you guys get to keep it, but we have
because
14,000 firefighters where you have
Because when
couple hundred.
you go through your reaccreditation, and they pull those records,
Yeah.
that's what the DLO is looking at, to see how they got through it.
Yep.
But as an agency, we also don't have to do knocks for our own departments. Most of us do.
You can do it in-house.
If
You should have
do
training
in-house,
Yeah, it's in your
That will survive.
Yeah. You gotta show how they got there, some way.
Some documentation of how they got to that point.
Yeah, like, if you can show me that this is how they got through that course.
Okay. I hear what you're saying. I totally get it.
No, I think there's definitely merit to that. I just want to think about it when we're not maybe in this meeting setting, to like think of all the ways that this,
Could come back.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
just to make sure that,
Lots of
I
negatives.
just did this, like some about something at work, and I took it out, and then I'm like, dang it.
yeah,
So I totally give you.
yeah. And we can potentially look back at like the history of some of this stuff and see if maybe like how it's changed over the years and why it might have been implemented or why it wasn't. Yeah. Okay. So do we feel good about the firefighter 1 task book?
Rick, I love having that top part on there, because I get that question all the time.
Okay.
That is great to have that.
Well, good.
I get that phone call as the DLO all the time.
I'm gonna make you a T-shirt.
The hard thing is like I tell folks, the hard thing is when you're starting a new cert, getting that initial group of people so you can start signing folks off. So.
And then they leave, and then you're back to square one again.
I mean, but now we can, I think, I don't want to speak out of turn, but for firefighter 1 and 2, it's probably not gonna be an issue, but something like aerial operator or something like that, if you brought in somebody from a neighboring department that has that experience to do the task work, I mean, that's absolutely reasonable, which is a 180 from what we did under previous administrations. That was verboten. And I, as the fire chief, could sign off, and I used to argue, but I don't know anything about that. But why would I be able to sign that off? Well, you're the fire chief, but I don't know anything about it.
Yeah.
So, just to follow up with you, we're looking at the instructor 1 task book, I know we're not on it. But
Bring it
the
up.
verbiage is still there, but it's just 1 box per bullet point.
And I mean, it's always possible that, you know, when we were copying boxes, maybe it got put in one way and then it wasn't realized, but, yeah.
That's her story, she's sticking to it.
I like it a lot.
I don't know, but just gonna take a look at that one real quick, just to kind of compare.
I think instructor too might be.
I think as we kind of talked about, the instructor, there's not necessarily equipment specific to an agency with being like an instructor. Maybe the forms change just a hair, but they're basically the same thing. Whereas, you know, as I'm thinking about this and looking back when I was going through my FireFighter 1 Academy way back when, you know, if I had gone to, you know, and actually this has happened quite a bit since I've become training officer, you send somebody to like a regional academy, then they have to come back, and to me that's where the requisite knowledge and skills kind of come in. Do they actually know your agency's equipment, not just some generic, you know? So whether it be, you know, so it's kind of, there's a little bit of, yes, it's connected to the class, but it's also a little bit connected to, okay, you went to a class and they used all smoothbore, but as an agency we use fog nozzles. Do you actually have the skills and knowledge to operate a fog nozzle instead of a smoothbore? So there's a little bit to me that still goes back to the agency, making sure they come back and know the equipment that agency has, as opposed to, well, yeah, they went to a class and they don't. So that happens. It happens some within the firefighter stuff. It definitely happens in the like technical rescue world, because I have people going to, you know, a CMC class and they play with clutches all day long, and then they come back and want me to buy them because they didn't even train on a brake bar rack, which is what we carry. So there's a little bit that I think leaving the box there to say, yes, they have the requisite knowledge to operate within our department.
So just like devil's advocate on it, then don't sign the box. Right, until they prove competency on your equipment.
Yeah, the task box, it's covered in the task box.
So that's,
Yeah,
just.
I think some of this goes back to when we had every task book had 3 boxes for the task plus your other one, so. We've gotten down to just a few task books.
I mean, it's significantly less than it was, so I'll give you that right now.
So are we waiting for something?
Well, I was
Oh, you were
curious
checking.
what Kayla's thoughts were on the instructor or the instructor task book is pretty different.
And I was trying to find the minutes from our last meeting, but I can't. You were there. Do you just remember?
You
were there?
Wow, that was hard.
I was the chair.
You were the chair.
I don't remember, but it made sense. It makes sense looking at it.
So I wonder if that's something maybe a little more similar to firefighter 1, like maybe driver might be. I just want to take a look at what that might look like.
I don't want to kill you, but were you going to create a task book for the support position?
Yeah, so if we're gonna have a task book, then we would create a task book for the support position, and it would be very similar. We would just list out
shorter.
It'll be shorter, and it'll just basically be copied directly from the standard.
Okay. Thanks.
And
Just wondering.
would have one checkbox per level,
Big checkbox.
unless you want more.
No, I'm not asking for it. It was a question.
I think the one checkbox is basically he's asking you.
One big checkbox.
Just
one big box.
That
I've done stuff.
that you feel comfortable with them doing this task.
Okay, so here is the driver one. And this one is a little busier as well. So it looks like it's been done a couple different ways. So I'm not entirely sure why the instructor one is different. I'm sure there's a reason.
I don't remember.
This
We
is
have,
driving,
sure,
it's
Kayla,
like
I'm sure we
talking
have.
instructor.
Kurt let us down, so.
It was a long time ago.
I could almost see, if we're getting back, I could see a box for the task and a box for requisite knowledge. I struggle with the third box for requisite skills because it's saying that they're doing the task.
Yeah,
So I could see eliminating that box.
okay.
And when you sign off the top, that's the same thing, that they're meeting the requisite skills. Otherwise,
Leave the verbiage in and just remove the box.
yeah, you can leave it there, just doesn't have a checkbox because it's still, it's stating the same thing. They're able to complete the task.
Or,
They're showing the requisite skills for
or do
completing the task.
we could remove the box from the one, like the main, so,
4.31, you're talking?
let's see.
I think it would be
Sorry,
better to
not-
get rid of it under the B
If,
versus
if
the
we,
main.
like, we removed the box from this, and then we have the boxes for these two, because this combined makes this.
I would rather have it on the skill.
Yeah.
Because then it's forcing them to complete a specific skill to show requisite skills. But removing the box at requisite skills, I think that one's met by that top box.
Okay.
So let's look.
Otherwise, I will have firefighters come in. I went to class, I have the requisite skills, sign me up.
Okay, so,
Not that I necessarily will,
You have the,
not that I would, but they're gonna come.
so removing,
Knowledge by going to class.
removing the boxes from the requisite skills sections is what we want to do?
Skills are what you retained for the class.
I'm sorry, what?
thank you. So the discussion right now is removing the box on B. Leaving
Okay,
A and then the.
so now we're talking about leaving the knowledge?
Yeah, but that's what they get from the class.
Right.
The class is the
I thought the whole
knowledge.
discussion was removing potentially the knowledge.
We've gone a couple of ways here.
Interesting.
I think the knowledge one should stay in there. If they go to an outside class and an instructor signs them off from that class, if they've got the requisite knowledge, then I can choose as AHA to accept it or not. But to me, the requisite skill one is a redundancy. If they're performing a task, then they obviously are showing the requisite skills.
Right, they go to class to get the knowledge, but they do the skills to get the skills.
Yeah.
Yeah. 'Cause, I mean, so, yeah, you send somebody out to driver class, they come back with the knowledge, and then you do your rodeo or whatever task performance you do, and that's the skills, right? I mean,
Well, like if you look at like 6.2.2, right? 6.2.2 is transmit and receive communications using fire department equipment and technology, given equipment and technology and operating procedures so that the information is accurate, complete, clear, and relayed within the time established by the AHJ, right? But if the requisite skill for that is the ability to operate communications equipment and technology and discriminate between routine and emergency traffic, right?
So they have two tasks to perform?
Ultimately, yeah.
yeah, the knowledge happened in some PowerPoint slide, and the skills is,
Oh, I see, never mind. I've
mean,
got A and B, or the 2.2.3 is below the, I'm sorry, 2.2.2 is below the A and B above, my bad. Ignore me.
If they're doing B, I mean, if they can complete 6.2.2,
Then they're doing
then
B.
they have to be able to do B first.
Yeah.
They're, yeah, it is kind of a duplicate skill.
I mean, I can see why the instructor app or task book had like only the like 6.2.2, the box would be there, and then knowledge and skills would be removed, because essentially by someone signing that box, they've completed the knowledge and skill.
Yes.
But what if they've only got the knowledge? They haven't shown the skill.
Well, then they, you know, sign the box.
Well,
Right,
yeah,
that's
but-
what I'm saying, that there should be a box for requisite knowledge and a box for the task.
The box for requisite knowledge is a knock or a training card.
It is. But you're showing that they're, once again, this is for them to carry with them. So they don't necessarily always get to carry their full training records. But they could take this and have the sign off. They should, if they have a Knox. Not every department offers Knox, they teach them in-house.
Right,
It's a
and then,
training record.
but
This
then
is
it
their
comes
training
back to, you have to either get something from that agency saying that they have a course completion. They still have to have something to submit to.
Yeah.
Because
That's
Steve's
what I'm
saying,
is
they completed it, whether it was in-house training over here and they didn't get anything, just having it signed off in the task book won't fulfill the requirement for the application.
I'm open to the discussion. I don't know if it's immediately obvious though, if we have a box near 6.2, taking an example, 6.2.2, and then the requisite knowledge and not the skills. I don't know if it's immediately obvious what that means to people. I think it's more obvious if there is just a box at 6.2.2 with an explanation that signing that means they've met both the knowledge and the skills. However,
Not having
there
a box
is-
and maybe assign two individuals though, would be that 6.2.2. Right, if these two get signed off, that means this is done.
Yeah.
So if you remove the box
That's
from
true.
the explanation, and you don't have the two boxes, so you're getting rid of one of the three boxes for the same stuff.
Yes, and I also think that's a good point. I also think if there's a box just at requisite knowledge and requisite skills and not the skill, the knowledge can be signed off by anyone because, well, not anyone, sorry, let me rephrase that. The knowledge can be signed off by someone, like a training officer who knows that person went to the class and they're validating that that person went to the class and they agree that that class covered the standard. The skills can be signed off by anyone certified at the firefighter 1 level. So we don't want to make it so that firefighter 1 Joe is signing off on the knowledge and the skills.
Yeah, technically, you
That
should
makes
be F9F to sign off the knowledge box. Right.
If you're teaching outside your agency.
Yeah.
If your agency is accredited to teach that level, an instructor that has that level of certification can sign it off.
Yeah.
Did I state that right, Bert?
But that's not the same requirement.
That was a whole other discussion we had recently.
But that's not the same requirement as the task box. It is a higher requirement, which is, you have to.
That's this one.
It's a whole other issue.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, if we're gonna require that the knowledge is being signed off by someone qualified to provide that, then that opens up a whole other, like, we're having two separate sets of requirements for signing off on this task book, which then also makes it more complicated.
Then how would you validate that?
But those signatures are still done up here on the signature page.
I mean, isn't it ultimately the training officer that has to put their name on the line to say they're sure that people signed off, or?
Yeah.
I mean, there's that whole trust thing.
Yeah, but we also, like, when I get a phone call, to just explain this to somebody of like, okay, so I have to have somebody who is an instructor and a firefighter 1 sign off on the requisite knowledges, so all the A's, and
Just
then
say yes.
I have to have no, they're not gonna say that to me. I'm gonna have to explain that to them.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought that was.
So, and then they're gonna have to have just a firefighter sign off on the skills.
Well, it could be the same person signing off on both.
It could be.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But this leaving all the box or more boxes leaves it open to
Yes.
the possibility of it being two separate people. Yeah.
Can't you just say what your training officer said? Just throw it back at them.
I try to be helpful.
I mean, I think considering all of the variables that we've talked about, it's probably why there's all the boxes in the first place.
Yeah.
So I'm glad we went through this exercise, because it did make me think about why we have the boxes. And I mean, I'm probably at this point more comfortable with keeping them, but still open to kicking it around some more in the future.
As the training officer, the more ways we can document, the better, because if something goes to court or it's pulled up, how are you going to show how that knowledge was gained by that fire officer or that firefighter if they're hurt or injured or killed?
Yeah.
So having more documentation is better.
Would make your life easier.
She never
If
sees
I
the
don't
task.
have
It
to
doesn't
see
matter.
these ever. No.
A properly filled out application.
Brooke only sees a handful of task books, that's when she has to go out.
I wish that it was a lot less. No, I mean, what makes my life easier is
Is there a way to
if we,
streamline the process for you, from your perspective?
well, honestly, no, I think we need to make a decision of like what the outcome that we want, and then I can pass that information on. Of like, do we want to just leave the boxes as this for now, with the requirements as they are, so the requisite knowledge can be signed off by any firefighter one, and the skills can also be signed off by any firefighter one, as it's kind of, that's always been our process.
How often does this come up for review for revision or what would be the next chance to say a good idea comes up, like, oh, we want to take some boxes off?
Yeah, the time
When would
that
be the next opportunity for that?
probably the standard updating again is when we generally do that. I guess if there was like a massive issue with it, then we could probably convene a task force for it.
We can reconvene you all.
Yeah.
I think leaving the way it is now is probably the easiest, but I think if you're gonna look at whether boxes are removed or not in a task book, that maybe just needs to be a separate thing altogether, not looked at necessarily as a specific 10-10, but say, hey, let's look at our training, how we're gonna do our task books. Let's set a standard for it, yes, and that way your whole focus is on that.
Yeah.
We will keep your name in mind for that task force.
I've been doing it for 20 years, so I'd like to change too.
Where you did it with the firefighter one, where you said the person must be certified to sign off on the skills, or whatever the heading was on that. Do you want to do something like that on the driver?
So we'll have
It's like a trailer.
That'll be the next time.
That's the next time we get it.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think just based on everything we've discussed, I mean, we definitely have some room for improvement, but we feel that we're comfortable leaving the number of task boxes on the application as it is.
Yes.
Okay. And
I like
then
the thought.
yeah, and I think potentially like the next time we do a task force for this, we could do a separate work group for just the task books and potentially the application, and then we could also then reconvene and bring it all together. Because nobody has enough meetings. Okay.
I still think we should just keep going through the chapters.
Okay. Firefighter 2 is essentially the same front page. And then we just added the JPRs for the thermal imaging. Sorry, this is so hard to. There's the signature page. And then I just updated to the specific references to Annex A. Sometimes that has some really helpful information. So the specific points are in there for each level. Any questions or thoughts on this?
Nope.
Nope. Okay.
Scared to say.
You're like, we don't wanna get into it.
It should be.
We can have that whole same conversation all over again.
Which one of the last four?
I might need a snack.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, might change on page 162. Just on the task must be signed off by an individual supervised at NFPA firefighter 1.
Oh, yep,
Firefighter 2, yeah.
thank you, good catch. I definitely
Good
copy and pasted that.
And you put that designation as department head in multiple spots, there's, must be a real problem.
I do get a lot of calls about it,
I
yeah.
know. Of course, yeah, but it's, you're the training officer, you don't have to go, no, you're, just because you're chief doesn't mean you get to sign that off.
Page J.
It's a big change. Big change.
Okay. I think we would just need the motion and the second for the firefighter 2 task, or 1 and 2 task book.
I make a motion and we accept
It's a personal.
the firefighter 1, firefighter 2 task force with corrections we noted.
Second.
And support person, and support person.
Second.
Oh yeah, and the sport person task book. We'll make that one.
Yeah.
Okay. And then it's probably a good time to take lunch.
Yeah.
Should we vote on that?
Can we get a motion?
Oh, sorry, I didn't realize we finished.
Is there a second?
Yes, that's it.
Alright, got a motion for the acceptance of 3 task books. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Okay, so a couple options for lunch. We can keep going, or we have meal cards for everyone. We can take like a full lunch break and eat down there, or we can have a working lunch if you want to bring your lunch back here.
What do we have left to go through? How much time do we have left to go through?
We don't have too much. We're going to talk about the guide to certification, and we'll go through the Oregon administrative rule a little bit.
No more discussions about boxes?
We're done with
Are we gonna have boxes back
today.
there?
Except for boxing, yeah.
Oh.
Anyone have any strong opinions or feelings about any of that?
We got chips, brownies, cookies, and
For
trail
the-
mix.
Yeah, you got cookies, peanuts, but do you need a break?
You would be work, if you were doing working lunch, like 1 or 2,
I think we need a break for lunch.
yeah, I don't,
I agree. So we're gonna do the full break.
Okay. It is, there might be some lines down there right now. So, what's everyone's level of hunger? We can keep going for a little bit, and then you get your free lunch when the lines die down. Have some snacks.
You guys know the place.
We're gonna take a break in a minute.
Okay, let's take
Short
a,
break time.
let's take a 10-minute break, reconvene,
We'll grab snacks.
grab some snacks. If you're really hungry, truly, please take a meal card and go down and get some food, but, otherwise, we can reconvene in 10 minutes.
Plow ahead.
I don't think we have too much left unless someone, I don't know, I've said that before. and-
Someone.
Yeah.
And then 3 hours later.
Sounds like she sent you. So we're talking.
Yes, I think it was
I like
roughly
that.
said, oh, this will
I
only
like
take
this
a couple
she's gonna
hours.
get.
I think that's what my
We
email
are
says, let me
technically
pull that up.
scheduled to
Yeah.
4, so,
You can hold us here the whole time. Do we
We
get,
weren't here.
yes.
do we get a knock for this as well?
Yeah, you get a doc for this.
Yeah, we weren't. I mean, we did the instructor and the firefighter stuff. Like,
make sure that the sound is working on this. Can you guys hear us online?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Okay, so our next topic is the guide for certification. Here. So we would be adding, we'd be updating this obviously to reflect the 1010 standard and the new edition. And then going through the table of contents, we would be adding information about this task force, and then updating the Oregon Administrative Rule, and then we would have the, I think it would probably be beneficial to just do one guide for all 3 levels. We could have the link to the guide in both sections on the website. Does anybody have any thoughts about that? Okay. So we would just have the, the application for certification information would have the support person information and what the purpose of that is for. And then this is the last guide. So this would be kind of a working document. So after this meeting, I'll go through the meeting review again, and then I'll make the changes to the documents, and then I'll update this, and then send it to the chair and vice chair to take a look at. And if there's anything wildly off, then we can reassess. We would update this to reflect the discussion today. The same with the 6 months, 3 months, and 1 year requirements. I would recommend that we leave this hazmat requirement information in here. Does anybody have any thoughts about that? Would update it, obviously, but.
Because I think it was only on hazmat for the support, was it just awareness, is that right?
Yeah, so I would update it to reflect that the awareness is for support person, and then awareness operations, and then the 2 mission-specific levels are part of FireFighter 1. It looks like there is curriculum, so the curriculum has changed a little bit. I believe previously IFSTA included the hazmat requirements in their 7th edition. The 8th edition doesn't. So you have to buy that one separately.
Of course.
But Jones and Bartlett does include it. So there's a couple different options.
Isn't the hazmat team using Jones and Bartlett too?
Hmm?
I think the hazmat teams are using Jones and Bartlett for their curriculum.
It depends on the team. For like if they're teaching awareness and ops, folks, depends on the team. I know 11 Susan was using 7.
I was told that as all the teams all agreed to go to one curriculum. But
Well, for the tech stuff,
for hazmat awareness and ops.
I was not told that.
That's what
And I'm on one tech.
That's what I did.
You have it,
For my team coordinator.
Sometimes
Maybe he wanted to go to the.
sometimes I'm not sure they all talk to each other.
So it was probably the last training association that the IFSTA took it out
Yeah.
And they're wondering like what the future looks like on the firefighters, so it's staying in here.
So it's still a requirement for firefighter 1, and support person. So, they basically will have to make sure that if you're buying the firefighter 1 curriculum from ISTA, that you're also purchasing the hazmat or including those components with some other curriculum.
And as it stands, it's, they don't have to take the class, they don't have to actually be
They don't have to be
signed
certified.
off, task certified, anything like that. It's
Yep.
just an orientation to the class.
Yep, if they want to pursue the certification, they can. They certainly can use that training towards that. They would just need to complete a task book or task performance evaluation. And then our previous guide had information on the incident management system, which I don't think hurts to give further information. Similar to the EMS requirements, the incident management requirements were split up. So now they're in chapter 4, and then there's further information in the annex of what specific requirements are applicable to firefighter 1 and 2. So they took it out of the general requirement for firefighter 1, and then it's in that it's now in the general requirements for the entire standard.
Yeah, and I think the reason we included it last time in the guide, if I remember correctly, is that there was more of an emphasis on incident management systems than the previous edition. So it doesn't hurt to keep it in for sure. But yeah, it seems like there was much more of an emphasis. So we included it in the explanatory material.
Yeah, it specifically states it in the general for firefighter 1 in the previous edition, and they kind of removed that for the new one. So. But it is still in firefighter 2, so I don't think it hurts to have that information in there. And then there is kind of information about which classes go towards that training. Any thoughts, feelings about any of that?
No mention of 700?
It's right.
It is also highly suggested to require firefighters to do so.
And then there's information about the task books, so we will, since we're going to keep things kind of as they are with the sign-off box, this will probably be fairly similar. We'll update it with the information about how task books are supposed to be signed. And then the agencies always have the option to add more task boxes if they want to. So we're just providing the minimum. Let's see. And then this just goes through each component of what the standard is. And then which courses can go towards firefighter 1 and hazmat. We can update this pretty similarly as well. These don't seem to be courses that any agencies really have problem providing, so I don't know that we need to have a ton more options on there. But if anybody feels like there needs to be more information, feel free to speak out.
If we're gonna include the support person within this, that one will probably take a little bit more work, just because we don't have with firefighter 1, firefighter 2, that's just a nationally recognized curriculum. There is not that yet, so we'll have to figure out what that looks like.
Yeah, we can probably get some suggestions for you all at some point. What chapters in IFSTA, if anyone's using J&B, things like that. I know the majority probably use IFSTA, but if anyone has their hands on other curriculum, we can include that. So yeah, that could be something we do probably via email or something. This also is a working document, so it doesn't have to be finalized by any means. By the time the rule comes out, we can update it as needed. So yeah, that's a good point. I think that would be good to include.
Okay.
Pretty much the firefighter one requirements, maybe eliminating some portions of it.
And then this would be the same situation for firefighter 2, just going through the standard, and then the courses that are options. Again, not a level that it seems to be difficult to find throughout Oregon. And then the prerequisite requirements and all the requirements that it takes to become a firefighter too. And then this has the prerequisite information for live fire training. I think this is in here because of the entry level firefighter was part of the application and certifications before our current 2019 version. I don't really know if we need to have this in here. It's certainly good information.
I think we need to leave what those minimum requirements are before live fire training, whether or not what that paragraph ahead of it looks like, maybe could potentially be changed, but I think saying you have to have covered these knowledge pieces before we even send you to live fire, 'cause I think that's important because, you know, because there's sometimes where your live fire opportunity, I can't quite get everything covered, but I need to cover these things before we get this acquired structure or whatever.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, the paragraph above refers to OSHA Division 2L, so we can update. I don't know if it's like the most recent version and stuff. We can update that, but I think it's a good crosswalk, and we do get questions every once in a while. You know, what firefighter 1 classes cover live or entry level firefighter, so it's a good crosswalk for people to visually see it.
I know I have used that before.
Okay.
So.
Especially the really small rural agencies.
Yeah.
And then this, I'll double check I did check yesterday. I believe this is the most current edition of this. So if this needs to be updated though, I'll go through and update that. But I think that's all gonna be pretty similar. Is there anything on here that you feel needs to be added? I know we need to work through the support person, and I'm happy to include everybody. Once I've drafted that up, I'm happy to include everybody about the task book and the guide for that too. But any thoughts?
Have you had a chance to look at what the new OSHA proposed standards and how they're gonna affect this?
I don't know that we can really do much until anything is put in place officially. So we would have, if it gets put in place, then we would have to change our stuff. But until then, I think we can only kind of go forward with what is in roll right now. I've read through some of it, but yeah, we just kind of have to maintain with what is in place at the moment. Okay.
Be fine.
Okay, so if we feel good with the guide, let me see where we're at in this.
Administrative role?
Yeah, just a little bit of, so normally we have our rules coordinator, Jen Howell. She wasn't able to be here today. She updates all of the Oregon administrative rules for the department. So in your book on page 170, all of the administrative rules related to firefighter 1 and 2 and NFPA 1001 are highlighted. So basically, what she would do is go through this and update all of the rules to reflect the new standard and the new titles, and then make sure that all the prerequisites are in place. So everywhere that we find, NFPA Firefighter 1 and 2 throughout any of our administrative rules, they'll be updated to reflect the 1010 standard. She also does a presentation for our fire policy committee, talking about the changes in the admin rule, and that also discusses the fiscal impact. So for these two levels, I don't really see this any significant fiscal impact, and given that support person, you would be doing all of the things that you would be doing for Firefighter 1 anyway, but does anybody have any thoughts on how that could have a more significant impact that maybe I'm just not thinking of?
Is support person gonna fall under the minimum standard as well, is that 18 years of age, that's still?
Yeah, that's gonna be for all fire certifications, yeah.
But, at 16, we can put people into our system and they can start training. So we can track their training, like put them into our system with a roster and track their training until they're 18 and then get them certified.
You don't issue them a DPS 16 number?
We do.
Oh, you do a
At
16 number? Okay.
Yeah, but no younger.
Good to know.
Hey, when did you guys start doing that?
Oh, it's been a long time.
Oh, you didn't know? I'm just kidding.
Yeah, since I've been here,
I thought it
just
was
can't-
18.
We
Yeah,
can't
me too.
certify them.
For years, it was,
until
yeah, I thought it was 18, we could do a DPS 16.
Look out.
Cool. Makes a big difference for the cadet programs and stuff like that.
Yeah. Spread the news.
Is there anything else
No,
that you can think of that I'm missing?
I can't think of anything, and no one can think of a fiscal impact we could either, but, yeah, I think this kind of wraps it up, so, like Brooke was saying, our rules coordinator will take a look, she'll probably listen to the meeting, take a look at this, and then update, it'll probably be a pretty straightforward update for her, generally, certification and standard updates are usually pretty straightforward, but if she runs into any snags or anything, we can communicate with the chair and vice chair, and if they think it's like a bigger issue, we can always open it up to everyone else, but I think it'll be pretty straightforward, yeah.
Do we need to make a motion to adopt 1010 chapters, 4 through 7?
We
We did what we needed on that?
Yeah, we did to adopt the support person and to adopt the 1010 2024 standard.
All these are really just grammatical and syntax changes, almost, lots of them.
The OAR stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be, including,
Some additions for the support.
yeah, there'll be a
some other-
support person adding that, and then it'll be, changing it from firefighter to firefighter. Yeah, NFPA 1010, and then, anywhere that there are specific chapter references, it'll update those chapters as well.
Then removing any reference to fireground leader starting on page 186.
Yes, I saw that, and we have to open up things in order to make those changes. So when we do this, I believe we'll be able to remove that. Yeah, I saw that as well. I know, it keeps hanging on.
That's a sad moment right there.
There's some tissues if anyone needs.
Thanks for
That's why we have the tissues.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But really though, we need them.
Okay, fine. Be that way.
Okay, so if there's no other significant discussion, then I'll let our chair call for consensus and we can adjourn.
There's no other discussion, we'll adjourn this meeting at 12:19.
Great. Well, thank you everyone. Really appreciate your time today. I know it's probably not the most exciting way to spend a Tuesday, but, it's very necessary and we, wouldn't be able to update things and move forward without a group of people doing that with us and for us. So thank you again.
Yes, and if you really loved it, we'll be doing a lot more of these.
Thanks for the invite.
Of course, and we do have meal tickets, so if you want lunch before you leave, please feel free to grab a meal ticket and scan it in as you go into the cafeteria. Lunch is on us, so feel free, and then when you leave, if you do take a meal ticket, if you could just return it in the box with your badge, that would be great, because we need those back. I don't know. But for those of you who haven't been down to the cafeteria, I mean, it's pretty decent.
It's not bad.
Yep, and there's a lot of variety. So feel free.
When do we expect the, like, 10:00, equivalent to 10:02 and, or for me, more specifically 10:05?
Oh, well, land-based firefighting or marine firefighters, is that the right name?
That's the 10:05. That's why I always
that
refer to it
is
as
probably
10:05.
gonna be the last one. I've certified one person in that this year, and I think maybe ever, in the 5 years that I've been here. But so we're gonna get a couple other
But
levels
the task force is a
updated.
nice small group
It
of
will be.
people.
It will probably be a very
There's only like 4
small
of us. It'll be the
small
same
group.
4 that were in the last task
Of your
force.
peers.
I might
Yeah.
have been in that one.
I think
It
it
was
was
better
that was right.
Had to have been.
Yeah, it was during the very start of COVID because we were supposed to meet in person and it kept getting pushed out. And then we finally just did it online. That was all because of all that. So
Maybe that's
yeah,
why.
and we hadn't done it since like 07. It was almost sunsetted.
And
Like, no, it might not be a huge for the whole fire service, but those of us that need it.
Yeah, and I think if it was more well-known, I can think of 3 agencies that would do that.
There's a few on the coast that could probably work with it. If they have any questions or want to get a hold of me, I come down probably, put me up for a night, be me, and I'll probably come down and teach. Yeah, so, but yeah, it's definitely a very specific group of agencies that applies to.
I would imagine we'll do.
That said, the Washington side, we're using it for the Columbia River sector. So since it's protected on both, obviously on the Washington side as well, we're using the task book and everything else as part of our curriculum as that regional group, so.
Okay.
So there's actually is outreaching into other states a little bit, they just can't get a certification out of it.
Oh, yes, because Washington has like 5 certifications. Doesn't that sound great?
And when we asked them about doing
Maybe more than that.
because they're IFSAC, and when we asked them about getting a certification to that, well, then put together a curriculum, put together the test, and then we'll charge you to take it.
Yeah.
And we went, wait a second, we have to do all the work and then you get the money? So, we obviously did not adopt it.
Yeah.
What's next on your list of projects?
We will probably do driver next. Get through this and at least present it to the fire policy committee, I think, before we convene another task force, because we want to make sure we're keeping up with what our capabilities are.
But hazmat also updated, and so did the I think it's 1035 now, which has inspector, fire life safety educator, PIO, and a few other levels. So those are 2 others that I noticed.
I don't think that, well, because we've adopted 1072, I don't think that one updated. I think just 470 did.
I think they did like a consolidation like they did with this one. I mean, it's hard to tell. I couldn't
look at it
fully
again,
tell.
Okay.
But yeah, we can
look and
figure it out.
But yeah, feel free to grab a meal. They're right over here, the meal tickets.
Yeah, please. Thank you.